Invest in the context of White Supremacy radio program. Constructive information on what racism, white supremacy is, and how it works. Visit the blog at racism-notes.blogspot.com. That's racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button is in the top right corner. Links for Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal are below. Gus's wish list is at Amazon under Gus T. Renegade. 15 years and counting of counter-racist content.
This is the place they say people come from far, far, far away to find their dreams, chasing down these meteors and comets called dreams in the sky of life. There's certain hot spots where these meteors and stars have tendency to fall. I bet you hazard that California is one of those spots. I believe that to be true. They say this is the place.
Too afraid to show their faces, a sheriff's deputy and her husband recall the racism that forced them out of their Orange County home. Good evening. I'm Pat Harvey.
And I'm Paul Majors. Racial attacks and vandalism, that's what two law enforcement officers say their family endured when they moved to Yorba Linda looking for a better life. CBS 2 Orange County reporter Stacey Butler is live in Yorba Linda with the family's very disturbing story. Stacey.
The couple moved from this Yorba Linda neighborhood to Corona just 3 weeks ago in order to protect their identity and their careers. They say they don't want you to see their faces, but they do want you to hear their story.
We didn't want to believe that that's still going on.
2011, in Yorba Linda. I just couldn't believe it.
She is an LA County Sheriff's deputy. He is an Inglewood police officer. Together with their kids, they moved to this quiet cul-de-sac in Yorba Linda because they thought it was a safe neighborhood. They never dreamed they could be forced out. They say because of the color of their skin.
I just saw the escalation. I saw it went from, property crimes now to acid, which somebody could potentially die.
The couple says vandals first targeted their home a year and a half ago, just after they moved in, by throwing rocks through their windows and slashing all the tires in their cars. They filed a police report. They assumed juveniles randomly targeted them, but then the couple's 6-year-old son told them one boy on the playground told him he couldn't play there.
The little boy said to him, "No, you just can't play over here." And then I guess one of his friends said, "Don't listen to him, he's black."
Then their oldest son confessed after living there more than a year that often as he rode his bike to work, people would shout racial slurs at him as they drove past him. Nigger! Then 3 weeks ago, they say someone fired acid pellets at their car while this father was inside.
My life felt threatened at that point.
The Orange County Human Relations Commission was so disturbed by the allegations, they're now taking action. They plan to reach out to the African American community in Orange County.
There is racism there, and be aware and just be kind to each other.
Now, the couple told us Brea police are investigating both incidents simply as vandalism. They say that detectives have not followed up with them. Now, we did try to reach out to Brea police. We didn't get a return phone call. Neighbors out here that we spoke with tonight say they've never heard of any incidents of racism. We're live tonight in Yorba Linda. Stacey Butler, CBS 2 News.
The Cows, Gus T. Renegade, the Black OJ for sure, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Information for non-white people, victims of racism, I think, as this broadcast especially will illustrate. People classified as white do not need to listen to the Cows. They are already experts on the practice, business of white supremacy racism. Today's date, Monday, June 8, 2026. So I have been told we can add this to our, what shall I say, growing list of programs, broadcasts where we've done serious study of the local system of white supremacy racism in California and maybe even Southern California specifically. Certainly, I remember Michael Harris, he was a guest with us in 2024. We discussed his book, Palo Alto. Now, that is not SoCal or Orange County, talking about Stanford. But that book is more of a history of the local system of white supremacy racism in the entire state of California. Certainly lots of focus on the Palo Alto area, but masterful work from Mr. Harris. We just spoke about his book, which is not that old. Palo Alto, not that old. Lots of great info. Also, for today's subject matter specifically, way back, we've been on the air for 17 years plus at this point. When we got back on the air in 2009, one of the first guests that we had once the microphones were warmed up again was A.C. Thompson. What were we talking about? We were talking about his extremely important reporting, white vigilante violence in New Orleans, where white people who didn't even live in Louisiana, but they made their way to NOLA to kill black people. Not minorities, not others, not black and brown, black. And unless my memory is bad about his reporting, they came to NOLA exclusively to kill black males and bragged about having done so. But that's A.C. Thompson, spoke with us way back in 2009. I've even pointed out, like, wow, he's covered so much white supremacy violence over the last 15 years. Like, really, he could connect all of that. What does it mean to be white? But that's A.C. Thompson. Dr. Peter Simi was with us. Oh my goodness, we spoke about the boogaloo right at the beginning of the Rona in 2020. Even, can I get a low-key flex? Gus T had Dr. Peter Simi on the program. That was 2 programs on that day in 2020, because we also had our guest black male join us live from Brazil to discuss the system of white supremacy and how the COVID pandemic was playing out down in South America. But when we did those 2 programs, we did not slack. And I remember specifically Dr. Simi talked about his work on these different groups that study terrorism. And I said, wow. My conclusion about the master terrorists in the universe, I said, Dr. Simi, did you all have any sort of focus or study on white supremacists as a terrorist organization? And that was one in the archives. He didn't answer my question the first time. We had to peel back and say, wait a minute, Dr. Simi, were y'all looking at white supremacist organizations? And then on the second time around, we got a firm no, which was reminded me of some of the content that I read in today's book. But Dr. Simi in the broadcast from way back, white man expert on terrorism in this part of the world. This program specifically, you talk about sending me down memory lane. Since this program is specifically focused on Orange County, we had filmmaker, cowbell, Chandra Maxwell, black female, as a guest on the program way back over a decade ago. We spoke about her film Black Behind the Orange Curtain, which all about being a black person victim of white supremacy in Orange County, California. And within all of that, we had Rusty Kennedy, who at the time was executive director of the Orange County Commission on race relations. We even spoke to old Rusty Kennedy, white man, about them. You heard the intro audio that we had today, the acid rounds being fired at the garage of black homeowners in Orange County, and these were enforcement officers. They said the young lady, black mother, she worked for the LA County Sheriff's Department, and we don't want no niggers here. I thought we, proud. We love our officer that we don't want no niggers here. Firing acid. I remember when I heard that report way back, at this point, it's about 13 years ago, but when I heard that report, I said, man, where did you get acid rounds? It's been almost 15 years. I would be in the exact same spot. Where do you get acid rounds? Anyway, we have done our diligence. I think that's a sample on specifically Orange County and the system of white supremacy racism. So with that as a background, I always say, echoing Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, reading nonfiction more important than watching television. Always look, what are new books, coming out 2026. We're halfway through the year, basically. New works to help us better understand what racism is, how it works, what it means to be white. One of the books pops up, lots of lists for new books of the year that folks should check out. American Reich, A Murder in Orange County, Neo-Nazis, and a New Age of Hate. This covering the, senseless murder of Blaze Bernstein down in Orange County. What happened, the lead up, giving lots of, I guess the author, he can better tell you, but my view, to detail this case, how it relates to the system of white supremacy racism in Orange County's history of white supremacy racism, and then connects more broadly to the system of white supremacy, at least in North America. Some of our favorite folks pop up in this text: Dylan Roof, Peyton Gendron, two different people, but some folks we are very familiar with, and some of the same pitiful themes will pop up in this text. Real pleasure to have him join us again to discuss his brand new book for the evening. Joining us live, I think I got his name correct. He even, in fact, I thought I was on my job calling him. He had already dialed in, like, what are you doing? I'm already on the line. Let's get it together. Indeed. Joining us live for our Monday evening, our guest, Mr. Eric Lichtblau. Mr. Lichtblau, you with us, sir?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You are great. If you can keep your audio level about there, we should be grand. Thank you so much for joining us, giving up a bit of your, for sure, giving up some of your Monday evening. For any of our listeners,
especially with game 3 coming up in the 8th, so yeah.
Asking a lot to get folks to give up their ball games, indeed. And President Trump's supposed to be in New York to view and everything. Oh, my goodness.
God help us.
Actually, if you could speak, it's at first you were a little bit louder. Now it seemed like your volume dropped. I guess if you could maybe get a little bit closer to your microphone, or maybe you could.
All right. Here, let's see if that is that any better?
That is an improvement.
Is that an improvement? Okay, let's try that.
Okay, I'll let you know if it goes back down again, but make sure you give us your lots of energy and loud voice, maybe. For folks, this might be their first time hearing about you. Maybe they have not read American Reich. Anything that you would like to share with us about who you are, the work you do, briefly before we get to the book?
Sure. Well, this is my 4th book, American Reich. I was a reporter, reporter for the New York Times, and before that, the Los Angeles Times for many years, and I've written about law enforcement and national security for most of my career, both in newspapers and now in books, and came upon this subject of the really horrifying surge in hate crimes and racial violence and extremism that we're seeing a few years ago, after a whole string of horrifying hate crimes. You mentioned a couple of them, Dylan Roof in South Carolina, Gendron in Buffalo at the Tops grocery store, the Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. There was the El Paso Walmart. We've had one horrible slaughter of one ethnic group or other after another, and you don't have to go back to the 1960s or the 1910s, the Red Summer or the height of the Civil Rights Movement to find these really historic lows in terms of mass casualties, mass slaughters of people of different races or different religions or different ethnic targets. We're living in it right now, and I wanted to look at this because the one common denominator in all of these cases and more that I just mentioned is that the attackers were neo-Nazis. They were card-carrying neo-Nazis with assault-style weapons. That was to a person the MO of the attackers, and you can add to that list young men with very few exceptions. The Tree of Life synagogue attacker was a guy in his early 50s, but except for him, these were all guys in their late teens or early 20s. And the same with the horrible attack that we just had in San Diego at the mosque just a few weeks ago now, where two teenagers attacked the mosque there. There were only 3 killed, and I say only because it would have been probably far worse, except for the heroic actions of a security guard who unfortunately himself died, a Muslim security guard who probably saved many lives, including those of a whole building full of daycare pre-K students, about 140 students, and he confronted and shot the attackers, who then killed themselves as police were zeroing in on them, or that would have been probably much, much worse. But again, the MO of those two, the same as so many of these others, neo-Nazis, teenagers who wrote up one of these searing manifestos, their hatred of all groups, not even particularly Muslims. I mean, yes, Muslims were on their hit list of people they hated, but they hated blacks, they hated Jews, they hated Muslims, they hated gays, they hated women. The hatred just spewed out in all directions, like the Dylan Roofs and the Gendrons and the others. And the other common denominator, unfortunately, is that they live stream their attacks. I mean, which has become more and more common. And they paid homage to, they called their manifesto, in fact, the Sons of Toronto, to the killer in New Zealand a few years back who took out 2 mosques in New Zealand and killed about 58 Muslims there, so following in his grotesque footsteps. So that's what this book is about. We're in the midst of a 10-year surge of hate crimes in America. We're at record levels, and I use Orange County, California. I've given you sort of the national landscape in the last few minutes there, but I use Orange County as a microcosm, really a petri dish of kind of an extreme example. This one murder of a gay Jewish student at the hands of a former high school classmate who becomes a neo-Nazi, becomes radicalized, is emblematic really of hundreds, really thousands of kids around the country who turn to violent hatred, not just harassment or bullying or unpopular views, but out and out crime and violence and even murder, which the trend lines we've seen in the last decade are just up and up and up. And Orange County has had far more than its share of that in the streets and in murders and violent crimes, even on January 6th, where you saw hundreds of rioters with neo-Nazi emblems and flags, Confederate flags, neo-Nazi symbols and anti-Semitic symbols, and I think you mentioned the Boogaloo Boys, Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, all represented there, white nationalist type groups. Orange County sent almost 20 people there. They were overrepresented as sort of right-wing extremists. So I look at them as kind of a template for how the country has become so radicalized towards this racial hatred in the last decade. And that trend line starts in 2015, which I'm sure you and your viewers will also remember was the year that Donald Trump started his campaign for president, going down the golden escalators at Trump Tower, talking from his very first words about the Mexican rapists and criminals who were invading America, and never let up with that xenophobia to this day. In fact, it's only redoubled in his rhetoric since then. So that's the focus of this book, is how we got to this point.
Awesome. We'll see if we can dig into as much detail as possible in the time that we have you, Mr. Lichtblau. Am I saying your name correctly, Eric Lichtblau?
It's Lichtblau, but I'll recognize almost anything. It's a tough one to say. Eric is fine, please.
But bear with me. I'm still learning. Lichtblau. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's good.
Lichtblau. Much obliged, sir. I'm going to try and see if I can get it. If folks have questions such while we're listening in, number listening in 720-716-7300, the code 564943, pound, press star 61 if you would like to participate. For listeners who have not seen you or they haven't got their copy of American Right yet, you are classified as a white man. Is that correct, Mr. Lichtblau?
I am indeed, yes.
Okay. Have you ever at any point have folks ever questioned or maybe not accepted you as a white man? Has that ever happened? Have you ever had problems where people didn't accept you as white?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. You talk a lot. You've already mentioned Dylan Roof and Peyton Gendron and Wade Page and some of the folks we're familiar with. Some of them we'll learn as we proceed. But the connecting thread, the system of white supremacy, racism. We start our programs. I use the term racism, the term white supremacy as synonyms. I use the same definition for both terms. That definition, a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you think such a system exists? Do you think that definition is accurate?
I think that's an accurate definition. I think the modern day problem is that the number of people who adhere to it has grown much bigger than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. I think that we're now seeing a whole young generation of young people who, online especially, have become adherents to that. And I'll give you an example sort of to illustrate that phenomenon. I talk about a guy named James Mason in the book, who was a 1980s neo-Nazi party leader, the American Socialist Party. And he's still alive. He's about in his early 70s, living in Denver. And he was a cast-off from the Nazi Party in the late 90s, early 2000s, because he was considered too extreme even for that bunch, because he had a couple of child porn convictions, which they thought might be a little taboo. I know that seems a little ironic maybe these days. And he also hung out with Charles Manson, was a pen pal of his, and they thought that might get a little too close to the fire. So he was sort of hung out in Siberia, went off to live in Denver. Well, first in elsewhere in Colorado, then in Denver. But he was sort of an outcast, even among the neo-Nazis. For a while, he had been deep in with the neo-Nazis. He had written a newsletter back in the old printed out in Xerox days that was sent around this racist screed that he called Siege. He had first volunteered with the party when he ran away from home when he was 16 years old. We're going back to the 1980s here. Volunteered when the leader of the American Nazi Party was a guy named Lincoln Rockwell, who was later assassinated by one of his own deputies. But anyway, fast forwarding, he then was cast off. And the reason I bring this up is that he's enjoyed a resurgence today. It started in that period that I'm talking about in 2015, 2014, 2015, when things really began to bubble up in this whole arena. We had the Tea Party movement, we had the sort of isolationism, we had the closing the border and people, the invasion of the xenophobia really starting. And these young kids on forums like Iron March began to discover this guy named James Mason, who really no one had heard of at that point or hadn't heard of for years and years. And they were starting all these new neo-Nazi groups. The number of neo-Nazi groups really began to surge, part of the reason being a backlash to Obama, to our first black president. And the number of white supremacist groups was growing and growing in response to that. And James Mason had a whole new audience, and he became a rock star to these kids, to these new white supremacists that were creating new groups like Adam Waffen was one of them, the Base, the Order, a whole bunch, 20, 30, 40 different groups were just created in here, a lot of them on this group called Iron March. Which had thousands of new members. And Reed Siege, his newsletter that had been printed on Xerox paper, became like a trend line. And these kids started reprinting it, republishing it on the internet. And now it's everywhere among white supremacist groups. And people, including the killer of Blaze Bernstein, a guy named Sam Woodward, would flock to see him in Denver, even to this day, today, to see him, to get selfies with him, to get a copy of their book autographed by him, because, in fact, the San Diego Mosque killers, just in their list of their heroes, along with Farhat, the New Zealand killer, Hitler, of course, James Mason was one of them. So that when you talk about the definition of racism, where we started the question, my answer is that the number of people who adhere to that philosophy, I think, is far greater in America. It's difficult to quantify, but it's many-fold greater than it was 20 years ago. And the popularity online of someone like James Mason is a reflection of that. You have tens of thousands of kids. To put an actual number on it is very difficult. But sites like Iron March and the recruitment of groups like Patriot Front, USA Today just did a very good story talking about how their ranks have really swelled in the last few months, and their active recruitment, and just the number of individual groups that have grown and grown and grown. Were record numbers of these white supremacist groups. There are clearly more groups and more individual members than we've ever had in modern American history.
Much obliged for the response, Mr. Lichtblau. I guess my only quick pushback, and he did say yes, definition accurate. My only quick pushback would be that I think it might just be a change over the last 20 years in terms of having a less refined and a more overt articulation of white supremacy racism, given some of the shifting circumstances that have happened in the last 20 years, some of which we'll get to in the book, President Obama, other things like that. But in terms of young people being actively engaged in the practice of white supremacy racism, that's been like forever. whether I'm even remembering Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, racist suspect. They have those pictures. Elaine, Arkansas pops up in your book as one of the places. 1919, they had all the purges and riots and killing black people. Jerry Jones, they have him in pictures when they were integrating Little Rock High School in Arkansas, and he's a teenager. They say, hey, you got all these racist white people out here cursing and yelling and screaming at Elizabeth Eckford and these other Little Rock non-black students. Why are you out here, Jerry Jones? He said, oh, I was just curious. I wasn't doing no racism. I didn't throw no rocks or nothing. I was just curious, wanted to see what was going on. We said, I don't know. We look at side-eyed Jerry Jones. But there's a long history of young white people, white children. In fact, James Lowen, Sundown Town, you talk about Orange County, Sundown Town. We don't want no black people here. Even there, in these sundown regions, white children would be involved in the policing and the violence of making sure that we do not allow black people especially, non-white people, into these areas. So I think there's a robust history of young white people being actively involved in all aspects of white supremacy racism, even the violence, especially the lynching pictures. I see all age groups, 8 to 80, females, males, everybody's there. White supremacy racism, racist man, racist woman, racist child. Am I being crazy? Is there evidence about this?
No, not being crazy at all. No, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I think the difference is. Oh,
and your volume dropped really low. Your volume is substantially lower than mine. I don't know if it's. Are you on speakerphone? Maybe.
All right. Is that? Let's see. Did I just take it? Is that any better? Is that any better?
Give us another couple sentences.
Can you hear me any better now?
Let's go with that. Yeah, let's go with that. We'll see if we can work with that better.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No. What you're saying is certainly true. I think the difference in this last decade, especially, is the power of the internet to bring these kids together in a way that we obviously didn't have the technological means to do before. And certainly the active racism was always there, but now you have the ability to join them together, and even scarier, I believe, is the willingness of the Silicon Valley platforms to drop any pretense of keeping hate speech off of their sites, which we've seen more and more in the last couple of years, and I talk about this in the book quite a bit as well. So Sam Woodward, the killer in this case, and many of the others that I profile in the book, they not only became radicalized online, but they then spread their message online because there was little in the way of guardrails to stop them from spreading hate speech online. A few years ago, there was at least the pretense of guardrails online. We're gonna try on Facebook or Instagram or what was then Twitter or whatever to keep hate speech. You wouldn't be allowed to say so and so. I'm not going to give the details. I'm not going to give examples because they're just ugly and horrible, to be honest. But now, first started with Elon Musk when he bought Twitter and turned it into X. X in particular has turned into just a cesspool for white supremacists. And then Mark Zuckerberg basically followed his lead, to both of them really placating Trump because Trump didn't like being thrown off their sites after January 6th. So they basically just threw the guardrails out in the trash in the name of free speech. And I say free speech in quotation marks, what they claim is free speech. And hate speech is really now just anything goes. Hate speech is no longer even there's no longer even an effort to keep that off their sites. They openly admit that anything is allowed. There's a list of guidelines of things that you can say that are perfectly allowed about blacks, Jews, gays, Mexicans, etc., that you never could say before, and that's fostered this whole climate of that neo-Nazis and white supremacists have just seized on to spread their message.
If I could pause right there really quick, I just thought that was really important what you just said, Mr. Lichtblau. The point, you said you can say anything on these platforms. Elon Musk and Mr. Zuckerberg have kind of bowed to President Trump. And, hey, come say whatever you want. Free speech. Everybody can just say whatever you like, and that's what we endorse and champion here in the States. When he gave his listing, he said you can say whatever you want to about black people, say whatever you want to about so-called Jews, gay people. He did not say you can say whatever you want to about white people. And I can say, as someone who posts on social media, I get in trouble all the time. Like, they have banned accounts, and whoa, you can't say that, and whoa, we got guidelines here, and whoa, you'll upset the community, and that sort of thing. Like, now, wait a minute. Like, how can President Trump and these people get on and say everything, but Gus T., I get edited, and whoa, can't post that, better take that down, we got like, what is going on? But he didn't say you could say anything about white people.
On the list that they put out at Meta, which, on Facebook and Instagram, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have it in front of me, but it was basically for blacks. The example was, you can now say that, online in your postings, blacks are by nature violent. That would have gotten you banned before, and under the new guidelines, that's fine to say. That will not get you taken down. And you can say this, whatever about Jews being this or Mexicans being that or whatever, and that's all okay now. And that's hate speech is not illegal, but these companies used to at least pretend to abide by some self censorship in the name of doing their civic duty, now that's out the window. Yeah. So that's a big part of the problem. So yes, has there always been racism by young people in all ages? Yes, of course. But the ability to organize and to get their message out is now infinitely easier than it was in the past, thanks to the internet and the smashing of these guardrails.
Logical.
That's not to say I want to say in the name of fairness. I mean, that's also allowed people like the former Kanye West, has also said some horrible things about Hitler and anti-Semitic things online that he would not have been allowed to get away with before. So it has worked both ways. I want to, in the interest of fairness, it has not just helped those on the white supremacist side. So I want to throw that in there too, though.
Shout to Yeezy. Why the title of this here book, Mr. Lichtblau, American Reich, A Murder in Orange County, Neo-Nazis, and a New Age of Hate? And I guess especially the Reich part. Why did you pick this for the title, sir?
Why American Reich? Yeah, well, the publisher and I, we went through a bunch of different options, and the idea of these young people, and again, they are overwhelmingly young people who are committing these horrible hate crimes. They believe in what's called accelerationism. Trying to create a new racial state. The idea of the Nazi Reich, they are looking to create a new racial state along the lines of what James Mason has indoctrinated them into. And so the idea of American Reich, that is the goal of these kids, and they've used terrifying force and what they call sort of spectacular violence to create it. Again, these two kids in San Diego being just the latest, and I fear not the last example. We've had just in the last few years the worst attacks against almost every ethnic group that you can name, just in a relatively short period of time. The worst slaughter of blacks, a single attack against blacks ever on American soil, was at a Buffalo grocery store, not in 1890 or 1920 or 1960, but in 2021. The worst against gays, targeting gays, was in Colorado Springs in 2023. The worst against Hispanics was in El Paso in 2021. The worst against Jews was in Pittsburgh in 2019. It's terrifying that even while we claim to have progressed as a society in terms of our civil rights and tolerance and words like that, in this day and age, we've clearly gone backwards. because you don't have to go back to 1918 or 1965, the darkest days of the civil rights movement, to define these horrible acts of violence and hate crimes. Hate crimes are now at record highs. The FBI. I mean, I say in the book that this is the worst period of racial violence since the 1960s, since the height of the civil rights movement. The biggest difference being that while that horrible, bloody period was focused so violently on the South and the violence let out by the Klan against blacks in the South, this one is really dispersed around the country. I use Orange County as sort of an extreme example, but you can find victims and places that have been targeted literally all around the country. And almost every group has really been hit hard. Every minority group, from Muslims to Jews to gays and of course blacks, has been hit. It doesn't favor any one or other. They're all disfavored, and that's particularly scary. I think that this kind of band of neo-Nazis, in their eyes, they are the others are all of the others. Anyone who doesn't fit that non-white Christian, and I put Christian in quotes, but that Christian ethos, is the enemy, and that's the model, the James Mason model, that they follow.
Context.
In the latest manifesto by the San Diego shooters.
Okay. Context of white supremacy. That word dark, we'll get back to that, as well as minorities. We'll put a pin there for those two. With regards to, and thank you for the explanation American Reich got for the title, with regards to this, I guess, new age of white supremacy, racism, that particularly lots of these young people, like you said, the attack in San Diego just last month in SoCal, that's not Orange County, but still close enough. On page, or I have the e-copy, so I'll say it's from the prologue, very early on in the book, when you're kind of letting readers know what this whole project is going to be about. You write, the notion of a white society under threat of extinction from the marauding minorities was once the hateful idea of a few outliers, but no more. The great replacement theory has been trumpeted by Trump himself, along with far-right figures like Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson, fueling the mythical and racist narrative. Millions of dollars in political contributions from right-wing racial extremists have been flowing into the coffers of conservative causes to fuel the extremist politics. And I'll pause there. When I read that, and I said, notion of white society under threat of extinction was once an outlier. This is just a few people. And I thought for a second, I said, I don't think that's true. I think there is a long history of this being a very mainstream, dare I say, a very central component of white culture for a very long time. I thought Ben Tillman, one of our favorites down in South Carolina, who was governor in South Carolina, one of my favorite quotes, he said, and it's in his biography, he said, the threat of Negro domination hangs over us like the sword of Damocles. One of my favorite quotes of all time. Former governor of South Carolina. He has a statue up there to this day. I thought Lothrop Stoddard, this white man's book, was one of the most popular of the time period, early 1900s, the rising tide of color against white world supremacy. That is exactly what he's talking about. There were bunches of books like that. Madison Grant, The Passing of the Great Race. Even, I thought, recent presidential candidate Pat Buchanan, he wrote a whole book, The Death of the West. These are not fringe figures. This is not Timothy McVeigh. These are Pat Buchanan ran for president, unless I'm in error. Ben Tillman was governor.
Buchanan ran for president several times, in fact. Yeah, you're right. Well, I'm speaking mostly the context of modern American history there, and I believe that in modern American history, those have been fringe ideas. You know, I believe that we have taken steps of progress in the last half century. We did elect a black president. Let's not forget that. It's sort of easy to forget that in the context of what's happened in the last few years. But there were major civil rights advancements. There were, any number of steps forward.
You mean like the voting rights that they just gutted? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I hear that the Supreme Court took a few steps backwards there. Yes. These ideas that you're talking about from segregationist Southern governors like Tillman and others, yes, those may have been once.
Lothrop Stoddard and Madison Grant, these are not Southern figures. That's what I mean. Like, I don't think you're being truthful. I might even say you are lying to us here. This is a dominant thread. I didn't say Southern white people. I said white culture.
Yeah.
Lothrop Stoddard, these are academic white people. These are not, low count, can't read West Virginia Appalachian whites with one tooth. That's not Madison Grant. That's not Lothrop Stoddard. That's not even Pat Buchanan, to be truthful. And I mean, you said last 50 years. Isn't Pat Buchanan in the last 50 years?
He is. He never cracked he never became the Republican nominee. I mean, Donald Trump became not only the Republican nominee, but he became president. So I think that Buchanan was still considered an outlier. He was considered too extreme for the Republican Party. That's where I think you and I differ, was that those were still outlier views until Trump. Until Trump, those were still considered fringe ideas in modern American history.
Even that, I don't even think it's until Trump. I think it's until President Obama. You did not hear this publicly articulated. My framing would be, once there is a black dude in the White House who had a white parent, now, it's palpable. White people are talking about this publicly. We have an anxiety and a fear, a threat of white genetic annihilation our way. In fact, the data bears that out. As soon as he's in the White, you got that in your book. As soon as he gets to the White House, oh my gosh, the servers are crashing and all the rest of it. I think that threat is always there for white. That's Madison Grant, Lothrop Stoddard. President Obama drew that threat out. Do you think that's logical?
Aren't you making my point for me? Yes, I'm saying that became a far more mainstream idea, or closer to the mainstream from a fringe outlier idea, in the last now 10 to 15 years.
No, I just want to make sure I'm clarifying. I'm not making your point, Mr. Lichtblau. I'm saying this is not fringe. I'm saying that this is a dominant theme of white culture that was not being articulated as loudly until President Obama got to the White House. This is always there. But once he was there, oh my goodness.
Hush terms that came out in the open.
Yes, and it's not even hushed because it's such a dominant theme. It's been, I mean, I could go and pick out lots more examples where white people are talking about this all the time and all over the world, that these black people are a threat to our existence as white people, and that something needs to be done about this. This is not new. This is, white people talk about this all the time and all over the world.
But I think you have to acknowledge the difference is that with Trump in the White House, certainly we have not had in modern American history, even in pre-modern American history, a president talking in such xenophobic terms about caravans of illegals from asylums coming into the country, about in very racial terms, about people marauding in the cities. We've never had a president like Trump talking in such racial and ethnic terms, scaring the bejesus out of his MAGA supporters in ways clearly meant to stoke racial tensions. We just haven't.
I mean, some of the presidents have owned slaves. I mean, that notwithstanding, Woodrow Wilson had some pretty amazing, or I won't say, Woodrow Wilson had some stark and racist views that were articulate. I think he screened Birth of a Nation in the White House. So again, I don't really see that much of a fluctuation in terms of white people practicing racism, white supremacy. Most aspects of the culture are very, very consistent. Unless I'm mistaken, Woodrow Wilson is like history and lightning. That was in the White House. I don't think it's that much of a difference. And he was a Democrat.
Sure. Woodrow Wilson, yes. He watched Birth of a Nation in the White House, yes. Horrible stuff, yes. He didn't give any speeches, as far as I'm aware, of the type that Trump has given.
They say pictures worth 1,000 words. Birth of a Nation. I mean, come on.
I'm not aware of any of the type of incendiary speeches that he's given, of the sort of racially incendiary stuff that giving fuel to white supremacists in the way that Trump has.
All right.
Even Woodrow Wilson.
Yes, and the policy to match Birth of a Nation, but that's notwithstanding. Back to Orange County. I do think it is important when we talk about this region of California. I think many non-white people get confused and think, oh, wow, California is progressive. You know, Kamala Harris came from out there, and it's not Mississippi. California is not Georgia. California is not Alabama. So thinking that this will be a place where we can go and not experience racism, wrong. And for Orange County specifically, I think it is so important you talk about this being an area that is a so-called sundown town, racially restricted region. I want to give this is from the 2020 U.S. Census. So Orange County, with a population put at approximately 3.1 million, basically. And then the racial breakdown of this, 68% white, 2.3% black. Now, they do have 24.3% Asian, but 2.3% black in Orange County. That is no accident. From the book, you write the notion of a white... footnote. From the book, you write the Orange County once dotted with sundown towns where minorities knew better than to stay after dark was dominated for generations almost exclusively by ultra-conservative white men. But Orange County, once among the whitest regions in the country, has undergone a seismic shift in its political and demographic fault lines. I think that is massively important for understanding this region and the willful energy to make this region super white, and specifically no black people, and how that's influenced the history and kind of what we're seeing. Can you speak to that, and then how the changing of this super white dynamic is impacting what we see? Sam Woodard, how we get to all this.
Sure. Yeah, Orange County, which for those who don't know is just south of Los Angeles, is known as the Orange Curtain. It was really for generations was this conservative bastion which wanted to be everything that Los Angeles wasn't. Ronald Reagan, called it the place that good Republicans went to die. Richard Nixon came from there. You had a Western White House there. You had tons and tons of Republican money that came from there, and rich donors vacationing there, and on and on and on. Lots and lots of Republican congressmen. The Republicans owned Congress there for years, from the post-World War II through about 2015, 2020. There was probably not a single Democrat. Maybe there was one in 80 years or something like that. I say in the book that there was almost a competition among the Republican congressmen to see who could offend the most minorities. You could not be too extreme if you were a Republican congressman from Orange County in terms of offending gays or blacks or Jews or whoever the minority group was. There was no such thing as being too extreme in the far right. But that has changed dramatically in just the last 10 years with the growth of both the Asian and the Hispanic population, and it's now actually a majority minority where the Hispanics and Asian alone represent over 50%. Although, as you noted, it's still a very inhospitable place to blacks, who are barely 2% of the population. Several people I interviewed at some length were among the relatively few who are blacks in Orange County. One is a woman who moved there from Los Angeles, sort of seeking the white picket fence. She was a school teacher, and really came to regret it. I mean, was ostracized and almost terrorized by her neighbors in southern Orange County for years. Had to switch her kids out of the school. All sorts of racial stuff that went on for several years in her new neighborhood, with that white picket fence being sort of a myth more than anything. But and what's happened is that the conservatives, after so long having had this iron grip on power, with that slipping away, you actually had a few years ago had an all Democratic slate in Congress, which was once unthinkable. The white supremacists have really reacted quite violently. There have always been lots of hate crimes in Orange County, going back many years, and I give sort of history of that in the book. This is a place where the Klansmen openly held seats in Anaheim and other cities back in the 1910s and 1920s, and you've had many hate crimes over the years. But then in more recent years, with the changeover in politics, Muslims being elected as mayors of some cities, and on, there's been really a burst of violent reaction from these neo-Nazis who are openly saying, we need to take back white Orange County. And you see that from people like Sam Woodward, the killer in the Blaise Bernstein case, from other neo-Nazis, some of them just out of prison. One guy who I profile who has been in and out of prison 17 times with a big swastika tattoo on his back, and every time he gets out of prison, he attacks another minority on the streets. His last one was a black woman at a bus stop, and the DA was shocked at what a light sentence the judge wanted to give him, and he went to bat to get him sent away for years and years because he basically was a serial hate criminal, this neo-Nazi. And there's one episode after another, and Orange County has given rise to its own startup neo-Nazi groups. There was one group on the beaches of southern Orange County and San Juan Capistrano that was sort of the hand-to-hand combat neo-Nazis. They would train, with these muscle-bound guys who would train in right next to an elementary school on the jungle gyms, doing their paramilitary stuff, and then would go to rallies where they know there'd be liberals and minorities, and then look for people they could beat the shit out of. And that went on for years. So Orange County has, with this changing of the guard politically and ethnically, has had this huge reaction from the white supremacist crowd. And we also saw that, as I alluded to earlier, on January 6th, with Orange County sending literally busloads of rioters and insurrectionists from white supremacist groups to attack the Capitol, who then, of course, were pardoned by President Trump.
Context of white supremacy. I just want to back up a little bit. When he was talking about Mr. Lichtblau, he was talking about going and speaking to some of the small number of black people who actually do live in Orange County, because I thought that was so important. He said this black mom, she bought it. And what I said when we started this a little while ago, Mr. Lichtblau, I said, there you have black people. We're confused about racism. We think, hey, it's California, Disneyland, progressive. They got the beach and the warm weather. It's not Mississippi and all that. And wrong. And she said she got out there and I'm going to get my picket fence and my children to school. She gets terrorized. She said she came to regret it. Ended up having to move out. Like, why? One, I wanted to ask now, did she have any, I guess this black mom, did she have any reluctance when you went to go talk to her and, hear about all this terrorism and racism that she experienced? Was there any sense of, hey, I've had a really horrible experience with white people out here. I don't know anything about you, but get away from me. I'm really suspicious, and I just don't mess with white people. Was there any of that, or was she open and willing to talk to you?
She was willing to talk to me. She had told her story first in the Los Angeles Times, so her name had been out there. So I wasn't the first, and it happened as a result of January 6th, because one of her neighbors, who became sort of a rival of hers, was one of the January 6th insurrectionists, and he had given her a hard time at the BLM protests, which really became, I see those as, I write about those in the book. There were sort of some lead-ups to January 6th. BLM protests and COVID were sort of lead-ups to January 6th, where they were pitting race against race, ethnicity against ethnicity, and she was going to the BLM protests, one of the few blacks in her entire neighborhood, in this very nice, very posh neighborhood in southern Orange County, and he would be giving her the evil eye and putting out, notices through the neighborhood association saying, oh, this is going to be trouble. These people are here to make trouble, and what she obviously saw is like sort of blatant racism. And then this guy, a few months later, shows up under arrest for January 6th because he organized a bunch of people to storm the Capitol and organize weapons and all sorts of stuff. So she was fairly willing to talk to me and her husband because she had already taken one foot forward by talking to the local newspaper. And there had also been another episode just in her neighborhood with an Asian family that had really been terrorized by the same local community. They had to, by a gang of kids, white kids, and they had to start a whole neighborhood patrol just so this family could get some peace from these kids terrorizing them at all hours of the night. So she was, part of that. So, no, she was not terribly suspicious. She was willing to talk to me. In fact, we stayed in touch. I just saw her at a book festival in L.A. 2 months ago. So her name's Shireen Rahman. We'll give her her name and her deal. Shireen Rahman. Yeah, she's been put up a public fight to the people. She's not the most popular person in her neighborhood. Her kids had to switch schools, but she's tried to put up the resistance.
Prayers to her and her children. Wow, that is man, that is sad. Children have to go through all that too. You a little bit later on, this is in chapter 1, where you're kind of given the whole how Blaze Bernstein is going to be killed by this racist Sam Woodard in this environment, Orange County, where a black mom just coming out and trying to get her children to school can be given the evil eye and terrorized and feel like she regretted it. Just could have been her instead of Blaze Bernstein. You're talking about Blaze Bernstein's white racist killer, Sam Woodard, and you have so many of these points in the book, Mr. Lichtblau, where you write about it. I think this is one of the greatest lies that is told, that white people are ignorant about racism, that white people don't know, that they're not informed. Hogwash. You're writing about Mr. Woodard and him back when he's in school before he's out killing folks. You write, Sam excitedly showed Sean a picture of a prized possession in his bedroom, a massive Confederate flag displayed over his bed. The gleaming red and blue flag, a toxic symbol of slavery and racism for so many others, was a point of pride for Sam. He adopted the flag in class 2. For one assignment in a digital design course, he had to create a movie poster. He designed one for Rebel Without a Cause, the James Dean classic, but with a large Confederate flag as the background for the poster. His teacher, alarmed, wanted the onerous symbol taken out of the design. Sam stood his ground. I think we had Zimmerman mentioned already. It was a free speech issue, a personal choice, he said. The teacher backed down. The Confederate flag stayed, and with it, all the symbolic power it conveyed. And I just take something like this, one, because we have studied Columbine extensively. You did mention Denver already today. We've studied Columbine extensively, and Eric Harris, Dylan Klebo, affectionately nicknamed Dill and Reb for Rebel. And in fact, Columbine High School, the mascot is the Rebels with a firearm and everything. That's the way it used to be. But it reminded me of that immediately. And for even more, because they were doing the same thing, displaying all the same racist Nazi tendencies, and they even got arrested. Nobody did anything. And then they allowed them to go and kill all those people, including Isaiah Sholes, calling him a nigger before they shot him in the library. But the other component is, if this, I think, and you say this repeatedly throughout the book in a number of different scenarios, if this had been Miss Robbins, one of her children in school, and they had, I don't know what it would be, but if they had, I don't know, a Nat Turner design or something, kill Whitey, Minister Farrakhan looking menacing, and we're going to get these crackers. There is no way in the world the teacher would have backed down. Okay, Leroy, okay, you win. Leave Minister Farrakhan. That's what I mean. It's not neo-Nazis. This is white people practicing racism, and this is one of the ways right here they do not apply the rules equally. They let white people do anything, especially practice racism, where if this had been a black person, maybe Blaze Bernstein would still be here because Sam Woodard would have been nipped in the bud. Maybe right here, all this would have been stopped. What do you think?
Well, there were certainly any number of warning signs, as I write in the book, about his violent, racist beliefs. Yeah, and he enjoyed being the rebel. Yeah, showing he went to this art school in Orange County in Santa Ana, where he was definitely a miscast. He was not the norm there. He was the kid in the hoodie in the back of the room. His mother thought like he had some talent in theater and maybe it would be okay, but it was not a good fit. There were a lot of LGBT kids there, and he grew up very homophobic, probably because of his father, definitely because of his father. And he just started lashing out at all the minorities, and there was one scene after another where he's, doodling Nazis in his homework assignment, where he's, showing off his Confederate flag, where he's, making one slur after another, and then graduating to even more stuff, very severe stuff online anonymously, actual threats that don't lead anywhere because the internet providers aren't doing anything about it. They're not following up on pretty violent stuff that was alarming some of the people online. So there were any number of red flags that could have been caught, and he had in the end he lured Blaze by pretending to be gay, posing as being sort of gay interested, and luring him to a park. He had done that several times before, according to the prosecutors at his trial, with other kids, and I interviewed several of them, without actually carrying through on it, but he wrote he kept what he called his diary of hate. He wrote about how much he loved sort of terrorizing these kids and hate criming them. That's his word. He loved hate criming them by making them think he was going to out them or even attack them once he told them he wasn't really gay and he was just sort of playing them, and then this ends catastrophically with Blaze Bernstein. So there were many. The Confederate flag, that was just one of a whole long list of things of what if someone had taken that more seriously and realized like this is a troubled kid who's headed in a really dangerous direction.
Just emphasizing the way that I framed the question, white people are not ignorant about racism. Sam Woodard, not ignorant. As a child, he's doing the Confederate flag deliberately, willfully. And then, as I said, this is not a we didn't know. Yes, you did. Same thing with Columbine, but white people are permissive with allowing white people to practice racism. That's not saying that's a massive theme in this book, comes up over and over again, but white people, that's our culture. We don't really police or prohibit white people from mistreating non-white people. That's why this continued. Blaise Bernstein no longer with us, and it's like I said, it comes up. It's recurrent throughout the text. The military component also.
You can raise that. I would sorry to interject. I would raise that same point on an even bigger scale about James Mason, the elder statesman neo-Nazi in Denver, who is still living freely today. Now he is a horrible inspiration to hundreds and thousands of young neo-Nazis. He's been investigated by the FBI for years, but he's never been arrested because you can argue about why, but he claims he's kept on the right side of the line. Now he says that his line, I've interviewed him at length for hours, and what he's told me and what he says, he tells Sam Woodward, these young people, is, well, I tell them don't commit violence. But if you're going to
go big,
violence, you go big. Now he's an old white guy, 71 years old, a neo-Nazi who thinks that blacks and Jews and all the others should either be sent out of the country or killed. If he wasn't a white guy, I doubt very seriously that he would still be living freely. Can I prove that? No, but that's a strong suspicion.
There is no way. The same thing I said. But
can I find the FBI or the 302 report where it says we're not going to go after him because he's white? No, I don't have that in my possession. But I strongly suspect that if he were, as you suggested in your question, a black militant who was supporting Farrakhan instead of Hitler, that he would have been indicted a long time ago.
I'm just reminding listeners for sake, plus I've been on my grind. Hey, you can forget Minister Farrakhan and kill crackers. The FBI had a file. J. Edgar Hoover, the director himself, was spying on 21-year-old Frances Cress when she was a college student, not even talking about racism, and she had an FBI file. So if you can contrast that with a white man saying this sort of thing, come on, white people are allowed to. System of white supremacy. The military component. Man, another massive thread in the book. Just for listeners, the names, some of these names, hopefully, maybe all these names people will know. Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma City. Veteran Eric Rudolph, the Atlanta Centennial Park bombing 1996. There would be more with those abortion clinics that were bombed in Alabama and other areas. But the big one, the Centennial Park bombing 1966, Eric Rudolph, veteran. Joseph G. Christopher. Now, our guest, Mr. Lichtblau, he mentioned Buffalo. Didn't we do our time on Buffalo? Joseph G. Christopher, the .22 caliber killer who is going from New York State to Georgia, killing and stabbing black males exclusively. He got caught at Fort Benning after he enlisted in Georgia. Mark Furman, how are we going to talk about California and not talk about Orenthal James Simpson? Yeah, he got on the stand and called them niggers and beating up suspects, and he did get asked, did you plant any evidence? And he pled the fifth. But Mark Furman, Vietnam veteran. Wade Page, veteran. And in fact, Lane Michelle Alexander, I keep saying she talks all that about Chicago and does not mention John Burge putting cattle prod, electric prods on black males' testicles to make them say you did it, confess, say you did it, say you did it, say you did it. John Burge, Vietnam veteran. These are all white men massive thread in the book. I wanted that for context when I read this passage. This is chapter 2 from American Reich, the skinhead capital of the world. Global system indeed. Mr. Lichtblau, he writes, neo-Nazi band member Wade Page was instrumental in spreading the message of hate that so energized Orange County's white supremacists, shredding on his bass guitar at white power shows with his, there it is, Confederate flag and his Nazi tattoos on proud display. If the white power concerts were Page's angry, amped up public declaration of white supremacy, his earlier years in the military in the 1990s had been his indoctrination. If you don't go into the military as a racist, you definitely leave as one. Man, that right there just, whoa. What is going on in the U.S. military? White culture. Can you speak to that thread in this book in terms, and they even have reports where some of these white supremacist groups, they have been actively recruiting white people with military status so we can get, you got any explosives, understanding, firearms, target practice, sniper training? That's what we need so we can get more of these races. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, well, there's two different threads going on there. There's both the white supremacist presence in the U.S. military, and there's also the white power music scene in Orange County, both of which are major influences. So starting with the military, I mean, look, it's not all members of the military. You might push back on that, and I'll give you your chance. But it's a deep enough pocket, and it's been a sustained enough pocket for decades that it keeps rising. It's raising its ugly head, and unfortunately, with Hegseth as the secretary, we now have very visible symptoms of that. You know, he's invited this white supremacist preacher, to deliver the morning prayers at the Pentagon a few months ago. You know, he has an extremist Christian symbol tattoo on him. He keeps firing minority members who are put up for general status. Just last week, there were lo and behold, he elevated all the white nominees and blocked all the blacks and minorities. So there's a whole cloud around Hegseth himself, and that certainly doesn't help the climate. And you have, going back to January 6th for a second, you had a huge disproportionate number of both active duty and veterans who were represented there. Trump, in his false claims of having won the election, had tapped into something in the military as well as law enforcement. Let's not forget about them. In pushing these stop the steal claims, and getting white supremacist groups, the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys and all that to turn out. And he knows how to play them. He found that in people like Wade Page, who the person you were talking about from the White Power Band in Orange County, which is where Orange County and Huntington Beach in particular got its nickname as the skinhead capital of the world. Wade Page had been a military veteran before he joined these White Power bands in Orange County, and then he went off and shot up an American Indian Sikh temple in Wisconsin in what was really the first of these mass hate crimes in, I believe that was in 2013. We had never really had one like that before. There were, I believe there was 8 people killed, and a bunch of others that were wounded. A cop who was very, very seriously injured, miraculously didn't die, but he shot up the place with an AR-15. There was this former neo-Nazi member of this white power band at Orange County. We had never had a case like that before. Now we've had so many of those. Buffalo, just the last one in San Diego, Dylan Roof. Those have become almost commonplace. Hey, let's go find a target with minorities. If you're a neo-Nazi, and shoot them up. We've had anywhere from 10 to 15 of those, from small ones that no one remembers to huge ones that have just left this unforgettable stench, just of hatred. And a lot of them are ex-military. Wade Page is a little bit older than most of them. He was in his late 20s, but even some of the other ones in the younger 20s are current or just recent dropouts of the military. So, it's disturbing. And another key figure there is the leader of Atomwaffen, a group I mentioned, which Sam Woodward had joined with. This was this radical neo-Nazi group that likes to blow things up and go off into the woods and do hate camps, as they call them, to do target practice with assault rifles, like at Stars of David and things like that. And their leader was a reservist in the military who had studied nuclear science in college and had a whole arsenal of weapons and bomb-making supplies in his condo in Florida. And there were 2 bodies found in his condo, neo-Nazis who were killed by a third neo-Nazi. Then somehow the police in Florida let him go, even after they found all these explosives in his garage. Another case of law enforcement sort of looking the other way. And then they had to chase him 300 miles down to the Everglades, and they arrested him, saying, gee, maybe we shouldn't have let this guy go with all those explosives, especially since he's a neo-Nazi with pictures of Timothy McVeigh up and Nazi swastikas and all this kind of stuff. And so he went to prison. They were particularly concerned about his status as a reservist in the military with access to all sorts of military depots and national security interests. And then no sooner did he get out a year or two ago, but he was arrested again for basically trying to start a race war in Baltimore. You might remember this case. I didn't even, to be honest, I was near the end of writing my book, and I had a whole chapter written about this guy. His name was Brandon Russell, who started Atomwaffen, and I didn't realize he was out of prison yet. He'd gotten a 5-year sentence, and he'd only done like 3 or 4 years, and I see that Brandon Russell was out, had been arrested in this Baltimore race war. I'm like, shit, I didn't even know he was out yet. And he had gotten a girlfriend, another neo-Nazi as a girlfriend, and together they were arrested for this plot to bring down the power grid in Baltimore as part of an effort to start, Baltimore, of course, a heavily black community. Trump has picked on that a lot as a black population, to start a race war. This is sort of an idea that's kicked around neo-Nazi circles, and James Mason has talked it up a lot as part of accelerationism, that like bring down the power grid, bring down electrical circuits. Charles Manson sort of talked about this years ago. I'm not sure how much sense it makes. I'm not vouching for this, don't get me wrong, but they talk about it. And sort of the system crumbles, and then you'll get whites and blacks shooting each other, and there'll be a race war, and then the neo-Nazis will take over. So anyway, so he's arrested again, and now he's back in prison. So the Atomwaffen leader. So there you go. Another ex-military, in his case, a military reservist.
That's what we had Dr. Peter Simi on to discuss into that the Boogaloo. Oh my goodness. I do remember that case with Mr. Russell, because there were so many of those incidents. I'm in Washington State, but they had one of those here. I think it was around Christmas time, 2022, might be 2021, but they had one here where it was the exact same thing. We're going to attack the power, and these were legion. They were happening all across North America. Let's knock out the power grid. And then just the only specification that I would add in terms of refining, make it as accurate as possible as what this accelerationism is about, or the Boogaloo, same thing, was we're going to knock out the power grids. it'll give us an opportunity to kill lots of black people. White people know the power differential in terms of the guns that white people have, the power that white people have. It would be exactly what he said before. Elaine, Arkansas, Illinois, Washington, D.C., all the purges from 19, it would be that again, and it would be exactly the same. The military would come out and participate, the National Guard, Mark Furman, John Burge, we can get our AR-15, Dylan Roof. Now we can go out and do what we wanted to do anyway. We can do it legit, and it'll just be, oh man, the power went up. Martial law. The Negroes were acting wild. It'll be a rumor that they raped someone or they tried to break into the Walmart and steal all of the cigarillos or whatever it is. But and we can go out and kill. But opportunity to kill large numbers of black people with impunity. That's what that means, all that accelerationism.
Yeah, it's a chaos theory of race. Yeah, it's never actually happened, but except in the movies, but they've been talking about it for years, going back to Charles Manson and long before that. So.
Facts. I didn't finish that paragraph where I was reading about Mr. Wade Page, and the music component is important. You will forgive me if I emphasize the military aspect of this, because the violence. We do put the guitar down eventually and get to shooting. I just want to continue where I stopped reading at, because Mr. Page, you write, if you didn't go into the military as a racist, you definitely leave as one. Now, that's to his response. I don't think all the military is racist. A response like that makes me think, if all of them are not racist, the ones who are not are very weak and insignificant within the institution of the military. Continuing, Page, who became part of an elite psychological operation unit in the Army, carved out a psyche of a different sort when he connected with a group of white supremacists in the military. He railed against what he claimed was the military's discrimination against whites in favor of minorities. I guess Colin Powell and got all the promotions I get. I don't know. But it staggered me, one, what sort of elite psychological operation unit was Wade Page a part of? Oh, Mr. Lichtblau, are you with us? Did we lose you? Mr. Lichtblau, are you with us? Now, see, they're going to get me with the military special unit. What in the world? What's going on? Let me see. I think I have his number so we can call him. Let's see. Did you get this? Oh, he's still on the switchboard. What happened? Mr. Lichtblau, are you with us?
Wait, can you?
Okay, we got you. See there, they get some juicy some shenanigans.
That might have been the military.
That's what I said. That's what I said.
Yeah. I don't think we know the answer to that from what was released by the military at the time. I mean, he flamed out fairly quickly in the military. He got a dishonorable discharge. He did stick around long enough to meet up with a guy who carried out one of the military's worst ever hate crimes, where he ambushed two a young black man and black woman just out on a stroll and killed them both completely unprovoked in North Carolina near Fort Bragg, and he was buddies with the killer. So he was around long enough for that, but I'm not sure we ever knew what his duties in particular were at the PSYOPs. And then he left the military and packed his duffel bag and went out to Orange County to be in bands called I think one of them was called the Blue Eyed Devils. Another one was No Apathy. Groups with these politically message-sounding names that praised Hitler and wore swastikas on their arms and flags behind the stage.
I'm staying on the military theme for one moment because it's recurrent throughout the text. So this is way later on, chapter 5. They want to build a fourth Reich. You write the military had been a magnet for white supremacists for decades. especially in the South, and Russell had little fear of getting caught. He felt free to be a neo-Nazi, he said on Iron March, even as he was reporting for duty at the Guard. Are you worried at all about being found by your mates or someone now being in the U.S. military? One Iron March user asked him, wouldn't he be fucked if they found out? Russell wasn't worried. I was 100% open about everything with the friends I made at training, he responded. They know about it all. Direct quote. Russell's National Guard supervisors noticed his vitriol. It was hard to miss. Duh. He vocalized his hatred for homosexuality and faggots, a National Guard review later found, and his supervisors pulled him aside repeatedly to warn him that the hateful rhetoric was unacceptable. Still, they let Russell remain in the Guard, just as the military had done with Wade Michael Page and many other avowed white supremacists before them. Facts. And Russell managed to use his status in the Guard as a recruiting tool, trying to lure other young military members to the neo-Nazis. His training with the American military, prosecutors later wrote, helped him in fulfilling his neo-Nazi mission. I don't know if they're all racist, but again, wow. And even I have to rewind back. This is not white people. I have to say that is one of the biggest lies in the world, that white people are ignorant about racism. They just lack proper information to solve this problem. Wrong. He said they knew it all. I told them everything. And we've heard this over. Go ahead.
And one of the frustrating things is the military has this policy, this I believe intentionally ambiguous policy. That's my suspicion about when it comes to extremist groups and neo-Nazi groups, that you can't be an active member. You can be a member of these groups so long as you don't show it actively or promote views or espouse views. So just being sort of a silent member is okay. There's lots of ways of getting around that, and that's caused all sorts of ambiguities. So it's okay to be, apparently a member of the Nazi Party or Atomwaffen or any of these other groups, so long as you don't actively participate in it. Well, where does that get you exactly? That's part of the problem.
I want folks to imagine if this were I, Johnny Cochran, you pick the fella, and Colin Powell, you pick the fella, and Obama, and so they got their literature. Al Sharpton, they make donations to Jesse Jackson. They sent him a nice bouquet of funeral for put on the casket and things, and got all of Louis Farrakhan's speeches saved on their computer. Everybody thinks that was just, Leroy, be careful what you say about white folks. That's laughable. Anyway, the section on raping black females, I want to ask about word choices, but it pops up, and I've seen this before. I'm going backwards from the military component on talking about Sam Woodard, who killed Blaze Bernstein. This is kind of the central murder of the book, but then you give more detail. What is the environment that created this race soldier, Sam Woodard, who would go out and kill somebody, just pretend to be gay so he can kill. Blaze Bernstein, he is white, even though he'd be so-called Jewish, and then he identified as gay, but he's white, yes?
He is white, yes.
Okay. So you give the context for what would lead Sam Woodard to do this, go out and commit this murder. And you have great photographs all throughout. I'm so glad that you included pictures so we can see what these people look like and the knives and what they posted online. Context. It's the same thing I said with Birth of a Nation. A picture is worth 1,000. Or we even get to see the Confederate flag. Like, great. You write, this is in chapter 3. Saboteur, some of the nicknames of these folks. Talking about Sam Woodard. On social media sites he frequented, there was the typical teenage banter from Sam griping about schoolwork, about parents, about sex or the lack of it, and trading tips about video games. But beyond the everyday talk was a much darker stream of vile hatred, adopting war-tinged screen names. Saboteur was his favorite. Sam could voice his enthusiasm for Nazi-style fascism and his disdain for gays and Jews and fags and kikes, as he called them. All fags and fakers are in for it. Get ready to die, he wrote in a pseudonymous account he created on Grindr, the gay dating site. He could talk of wanting to rape African-American women and force them to carry around the spawn of their master and enemy. He could lash out at then President Obama as a spineless socialist, and like many conservative white men of his generation, voice his support for Donald Trump's budding candidacy for president in 2016. And that rape African-American women and force them to carry around the spawn of their master and enemy. On the one, I had to pause because I was like, oh man, I've heard this before. And I'm saying now, white people, racists, have for centuries. You rapists, niggers, stay away from white women, and miscegenation. That's threat of white genetic annihilation right there. They're going to ruin us. They're going to hop in bed, and they want us to marry, and all the rest of it. Oh, it's going to ruin and spoil the right white race. They've said that like forever. Ben Tillman, some of the very people that I've mentioned, said that for Dylan Roof. That's what he said he went to Charleston. He said, you're raping our women. That's what he said before he shot him in the church. That's what he said. If that's the case, why in the world do you want to go and I need to rape a black female and get her pregnant?
Why would that be your sick fantasy? Yeah.
I don't understand. How do you process something like that, Mr. Lichtblau?
I can't. I think he was saying this publicly, anonymously, but publicly on these various sites, and I think he liked the shock value the same way he did in school with some of these very public provocations he would make. That he liked showing himself to be a racist and violent and sort of seeing what lies he could get out of people. And sometimes he did get it right. There were, I quote one of the people online saying, you scare me. You're a violent guy. You're scaring me. But nothing ever happened as a result of it. There's no sign that his accounts were ever taken down, that he was ever lost, online privileges or anything like that. He seems to have been troubled sexually. His defense raised that at trial.
What do you mean troubled sexually? What do you mean?
Well, his defense tried to claim that he was a closeted gay. That didn't sell with the jury, it doesn't appear. They didn't buy that, but his defense insisted that despite, or maybe because his father sort of preaching homophobia, Christian homophobia to him for most of his young life, that he was suppressing his own gay orientation. Sam himself denied that on the stand. He took the stand, which is quite unusual. And he said, no, absolutely not. I was not gay even for a second. And he insisted, he gave lots of conflicting testimony, but he said at one point he had a girlfriend, but then, which is what he told the police after Blaise Bernstein went missing as an alibi. He claimed he had a girlfriend, but then another point he he seemed to say he never had sexual relations with anyone. So while he's putting out these sexual fantasies about these very sick sexual fantasies about raping black women, all these horrible things, he seems to have been a conflicted. It's unclear. He might very well have been, what we now describe as an incel, who just hated women, maybe especially black women, hated gays. It's unclear. I mean, he had a lot of hatred in his heart, obviously, but I'm not sure we'll ever know what his sexual identity, what part that played in this, if any. The defense tried to make that claim, so make of that what you will.
Given what you just shared with us right there, Mr. Lichtblau, author of American Reich, give out the full titles to get A Murder in Orange County, Neo-Nazis in a New Age of Hate. With your response there, I think if, talking about Sam Woodard, the killer here, if there was any sort of conflict about his sexuality, his white manhood, if you will, and if it's either he is incel, involuntary celibate, where he's uncertain or lacks confidence or has failed in attempts to pair with females, white females, and or if he is so-called gay, and you write in the book, you just told us, his dad seemed to be really, I think, so-called homophobic and made statements against gay people. And so that would be how he would try and bond with his dad. So, I'll make jokes about gay people. And that way dad will know I'm cool. Right, if he was actually so-called gay and he's having this identity crisis, dad hates these people and maybe he'll hate me too. No. If that is the case, maybe I go online and make statements like this, particularly in white culture. I've heard white men say, you are not a man until you've had sex with a black female. So for him to say something like that, I'm not just going to rape her, I'm going to get her pregnant, make her carry him. Like, okay, I see if I'm struggling with my white masculinity. I can say things like this to kind of puff myself up. And, wow, that's a tough dude. He's scary. And no, I'm into all the rest of it as you were talking about. The one point I did want to ask, because you talked about, used the term minority to this, you even said majority minority once before, where I have such a question mark when I hear that phrase. In chapter 4, you write the white race.
A bit of a tongue twister, yeah. Orange County, where minorities now make up most of the population, over 50%, between Asian and Hispanic, yeah.
Majority non-white. I'm not sure why that's so challenging to say. Rolls right off the tongue.
We can say that.
Majority non-white. Very.
Sure.
Well,
you know what the problem with that is. Now that I think about it, is that because there are a fair number of Hispanics who identify as white. So that creates a bit of a, our ethnic and racial designations are not all that easy. I'm sure you're aware of that, but believe me, as I was writing this book, I ran across many situations where they're not always as simple as they appear to define.
Oh, for sure. That's what you just said, Mr. Lichtblau. That's one of the reasons why we always start this program and ask people directly, are we talking to a white person, non-white person? Make sure we're distinct about that. But then, more importantly, for years, I've told non-white people, victims of white supremacy, the term Hispanic should not be used. It's very confusing. It's not a racial classification. You could be talking about someone who looks like Cameron Diaz. You could be talking about someone who looks like Lupita Nyong'o. One of these people is blonde with blue eyes. One of these people is about the complexion of Lil Wayne, Dick Gregory. So, it is not accurate descriptor for System of White Supremacy at all. And it would just be dang. So for an area, hang on one second. I just want to say, for an area like Orange County, it would just be, what is the accurate population number as opposed to Hispanic? What is the population of people who are white, whether they speak Spanish, English, whatever? What is the population of people here classified as white? So we get that number and we just go through the rest of it, non-white and whatever additional information. But that would be very easy and would make a lot more sense than majority, which the same would apply there if majority minority, if the so-called minorities are so-called Hispanics, the same thing he just said. Well, some of these so-called Hispanics are white people. It might not even be majority minority. It might still be, it's mostly white people. In Orange County, some of them speak Spanish, some of them speak English. But I tell you one thing, it's not what he did say. Ain't no black people, all the so-called progress. We got Democrats, we got Republicans, we got Asians. We ain't got no black people. And he said it's still not hospitable to black people. Facts. And that was my next question. Go ahead.
That number, I believe, has barely changed. That 2% black in Orange County, I don't believe that's moved for I'd have to
decades.
Check that. I don't believe that's moved for years. Just one other point on the Hispanic, which I think is quite ironic, is that what makes it even more confusing is that we now have a number of fairly prominent white supremacist leaders who are part Hispanic. You've got Nick Fuentes, who is sort of the new and Enrique Tarrio from the Proud Boys. There's another guy I write about who you wouldn't have heard of, but from the From the Groypers. He doesn't have a Hispanic name, but he's part Hispanic, it turns out. So you have a sliver, a not insignificant sliver of these white supremacists themselves who they may not identify as, but they are part Hispanics, and sometimes they reject their Hispanic heritage, sometimes they acknowledge it and whatever. But so it adds a sort of interesting and sometimes confusing angle to the whole dilemma.
Deliberately so. Again, why Gus T says we shouldn't use that term. Let's figure out, are we talking about someone who is classified as white, speaks Spanish, or are we talking about something else? Let's get that figured out, and then we can move intelligently. Talking about black people, now, ain't nothing changed about that. 2%, and we're trying to get that lower if we can. Get some of them to move out. You write in chapter 4, the white race is back in the game, which I found hilarious. He tells at the beginning of that chapter is a direct quote from David Duke talking about the 2016 election of Donald Trump, where you write, Mr. Lichtblau, for black people, the years after World War I were perhaps the most violent yet. With whole communities practically wiped out, that C word, from the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to Elaine, Arkansas, and Rosewood, Florida, in the scorched earth of white supremacy. Black Americans had the worst of it, no doubt, but the racial and ethnic violence wasn't limited to them. Immigrants, native-born, Hispanics, Jews, gay people, the others, all fell prey to violent bigotry as well. Now, this is one where I said, now, wait a minute. I think this might be another one. I might even say that Mr. Lichtblau might be lying to us here on this one. For this time period, you're talking World War I, so this is kind of early 1900s, so-called 20th century. We mentioned sundown towns, so is there a comparable level of violence meted out to any of these other groups? Let's start with the so-called white gay people first, because you mentioned sundown towns. Are there any areas where they said, hey, no faggots? They got the signs up right outside. You can see no gays, no trans. Did they have any of those type regions that you know of in the early 1900s in this part of the world? Well,
to give the counterexample in terms of violence, I'm not going to answer directly in terms of sundown times because I don't have that data in front of me, but the one of the biggest, if not the biggest, single lynching of the time was in the late...
Oh, wait a minute. We can't do that one here, Mr. Lichtblau. The question was, are you aware, because I don't need the data, we read James Lowen's Sundown Town. Do you know of any, I didn't even ask if you know the total number, do you know of any town they had a sign up, no fags, no queers, no trans, no LGBT, whatever? Do you know of any location that existed like that in this part of the world in this time period, early 1900s?
Well, I think it's a different phenomenon because at that time almost all gays were closeted. There were very few that were living out as gays. So you're not talking about the 1970s and the 1960s at a point where it was more visible. So if you're talking about the post-war period, almost everyone was living a closeted life, and it wasn't a matter of having to be told, no, you are not welcome here, because they were already living a secret life. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm just waiting for an answer to my question on this one, Mr. Lichtblau. You told us about sundown towns.
I'd have to do some more research. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm not aware of any. But I think it's a somewhat apples and oranges. Because it wasn't because there were so few who were living publicly as gay at that point that you wouldn't have the public reaction to that. In terms of sundown towns, so I'm not aware of any, but I could do some more research. I'm not aware of any. But my point in that section of the book is that, and by the way, I say in the section that you just read that blacks no doubt had the worst of it. That's not to minimize obviously the horrible from Elaine, Arkansas to Florida to Tulsa, et cetera, all the examples and more that I give had the worst of it, no doubt, but it's to say that there were also many other groups, those who did not fit the white status quo. Virtually every other immigrant group who were also, especially but not limited to the Asians who were beginning to come in the middle of the century, and before that, Italians and Germans. Virtually every group had their own stories of violent racial and ethnic attacks because of being seen as outsiders, not to the scale and severity of blacks, and that's why it's essentially why that line is included. But I started to give the example of the lynching in, I believe it was in New Orleans, where you had one of, if not the worst, single lynchings of the era, where you had, I believe it was 8 Italians who were unjustly accused in a murder and hanged on the spot at a jail, and that was hailed by the New York Times, made national news as a wonderful thing, and virtually every immigrant group was this intense xenophobia. That's not unlike what we're looking at today. That's the point of that section.
Okay, got it. One, I just want to point out for
it is certainly not to minimize the horrible violence suffered by blacks in the South in particular, and that's why that line is included. That the blacks suffered the worst of it, to be sure. I mean that's crystal clear.
Are you done?
I am.
Okay. Number one, I find it remarkable, and dare I even say suspicious. I hear that line so many times from white people, and it's almost like a brag. And I now hear it from white people as though they expect this to be a surprise, that I don't know this, or that the people they're talking to don't know this. Fellas, ladies and gents, white people give that story all the time as though they have a script. Hang on, you said you were done. I asked specifically. You said you were done. I didn't interrupt you. Hang on. Hey, you're practicing racism by interrupting me, Mr. Lichtblau. I have not interrupted you, and I asked specifically, are you done? You said yes. Hush. Thank you. I was talking. Just hush. You're practicing racism. Now, I was saying, you're still practicing racism. Can you not hush? I don't need you to say anything. Just be quiet. You're practicing racism deliberately and willfully. Thank you. You're still practicing racism. You're just practicing racism. You are practicing racism. Stop talking. I asked if you were done, and you said yes. Let me speak. Are you going to practice racism? I don't even need to answer that. It's rhetorical. Shh. Thank you. As I was saying before, Mr. Lichtblau deliberately practiced racism by interrupting me repeatedly, I said, they mentioned that about these 8 Italians being lynched, and then we got to The Godfather. That lynching of these Italians, act of racism. At this time, you had many so-called Italians. Many people classified as white did not agree about who's going to be accepted as white. You still have that now. Don't be confused. There is no disagreement about terrorizing, killing, mistreating people classified as black. He knows this. That's why he's got to keep saying that it's not the same. But then you come back and minimize and erode all that by putting all this nonsense next to black people. You're talking about so-called immigrants and so-called gays like this is the same thing. You can be classified as so-called gay LGBTQ and you were born here. That doesn't make you a so-called immigrant. I certainly have never heard that before, unless you are suggesting that to be so-called gay, you were born someplace else, then you got to travel in. I've never heard that. You could be born here and be so-called gay. That's not, you're still talking and interrupting, practicing racism. Shh. These aren't even the same groups, and certainly you're practicing racism. You're just practicing racism. And that's another one for listeners. I suspect that you lied deliberately right here because you're not letting me talk. I allowed you to speak. You interrupted me when I went to reply the first time. I asked specifically, are you done? You said yes, and then you are not going to let me speak at all. You're just practicing racism. I guess you got to work hard to defend this lie. No, brother, I'm going to call you out, my sick white brother. I think you lied right here. Gay people do not have the same history as black people. It's not close. That paragraph shouldn't even be written like that. No other group, period. Now, if you want to talk about non-white people being mistreated, great. That's not white gay people. Not even. In fact, you couldn't even just say, you know, Gus, I'm not aware of any locations where they restricted white gay people. No trans, no fat. I'm not aware of that. I have to look. And then you can give it. It took like 5 minutes. We got to keep asking for you to just say, no, I'm not aware of that. It is not the same at all. And you're using terms like so-called minorities to apply to black people, white gay people, white Jewish people, so-called Hispanic people who might really just be someone accepted, classified as white, who speaks Spanish, calling all these people minorities. That is a deliberate part of the confusion that I expect from people classified as white, like yourself, keeping us confused about all of this and what's happening in a system of white supremacy racism. He didn't talk about gay people being barred from Orange County because I've never heard that. It's black people that are 2.3% that they keep out of Orange County. Even the Jewish thing, I've heard that consistently. I've looked at a lot of those documents, the deeds specifically. Most of them do not have restrictions about so-called Jewish people. The restrictions are about black people. It's not the same. And even, like I said, I'll read the sentence again just for listeners so they know what we're talking all this is about. It's not the same. This could have been written in a way that is much more accurate and doesn't suggest white gays the same as blacks, all the rest of it. The sentence again, for black people, the years after World War, the paragraph, for black people, the years after World War I were perhaps the most violent yet, with whole communities practically wiped out from the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to Elaine, Arkansas, and Rosewood, Florida, in the scorched earth of white supremacy. Black Americans had the worst of it, no doubt, but the racial and ethnic violence wasn't limited to them. I don't even think that's racial or ethnic violence if white gays are being mistreated, which I didn't really get that much evidence of at this time period, early 20th century. Immigrants, native-born Hispanics, Jews, gay people, the others, all of these are lumped in as that right there. That's what I'm saying. That is a lie. That is massive deception. In a system of white supremacy, all of this does not constitute one group of mistreated people. And he just told us some of the people in the so-called Hispanic group are white. they are not in the same category with black people. You can take it however you want to. If AI wrote it, I'd say that's AI slop. You wrote it and you keep interrupting me when I point this out. It is a lie, professional strength lie too, and an act of racism. You won't even let me pick apart. Now, you can, now that I am done talking, I'm willing to hit my mute button. Now you can pick out if I said something that was inaccurate or not true. And even before you do that, I prefer, can you explain why you kept interrupting me there? Because I've not done that with you this evening at all.
Okay, are you done now? Gus, are you there?
Proceed.
Hello? Okay, if you're done, I thought we were having a discussion here, and I resent the idea that I was practicing racism, as you're saying repeatedly, by trying to make a point. That's having a discussion. So to say that I'm practicing racism over and over again by trying to make a point to correct an erroneous assertion that you're making, I don't think is practicing racism. I'm trying to make a point that you were not allowing me to make. That's called a two-way discussion. So I really resent that. I think that's unfair to have me on your program and then start sort of hammering away and saying I'm practicing racism. That's just uncalled for. So and I'm having a tough time following some of your arguments. You're saying that gays. What would that? I'm not going to ask you a question because then if I try and clarify that, you're going to accuse me of practicing racism. But that I certainly didn't say that gays were not born in America. I didn't say they were immigrants. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. And you seem to be suggesting that gays should not be treated as minorities. Gays are clearly in United States law established as a minority group. They're protected under hate crime statutes in virtually every state, as are almost all of the other groups that you mentioned. So I'm not sure what you're talking about there. As I said, I'm having a hard time following some of the arguments that you're making there. I understand your anger because you seem angry that you think that these other groups are being put on the same plane as blacks, even though I think it's made crystal clear in the language there. It says that blacks had the worst of it, to be sure. I don't know how that could be any clearer. And the point was that, and I do not think, I absolutely disagree completely with your point that this is somehow so commonly known that it's a talking point for white people or whatever it was you just said, that I think that the violence in those years, from not just beginning after World War II, but in the late World War I, I'm sorry, but even going back further in the late 1800s, that is by no means commonplace. That is, I've gotten that reaction from many, many readers that they were aghast and horrified to learn of that and the way that mirrors and reflects what's going on today. So you're obviously well-read in many of these areas, so maybe you just know a lot more than the average reader, but to say that that's just sort of a knee-jerk reaction from whites, I think overstates the level of knowledge. That section is meant to show that there was a level of racial and ethnic and religious and anti-LGBT hatred and violence going back historically, as I say, almost in the DNA of the country, going back for generations and generations. And so that's it. And so, again, I'm deeply disturbed that you would say that by trying to correct a few things you said and having a discussion, that is practicing racism. That is by no means practicing racism, and I resent that.
Your resentment is noted. Let me verify. Are you done?
I am done.
Thank you, sir. His response, second illustration of a white man practicing racism deliberately. Now, he interrupted me repeatedly after I asked if he was done, and then said, oh, you just an angry black dude, mad because I keep interrupting you and you won't let me interrupt us. He's doing it again. You're deliberately practicing racism again. And now I want you to listen to this too. He called me angry. Who's the one interrupting? You're the one being crass and rude, Mr. Lichtblau. You can't even hush. You just called me angry, said, oh, you're just an angry nigger. I didn't talk all over top of you. I let you finish your point, even though I do not agree with you. I don't share your view, obviously. I let you speak. You won't even let me talk. And this is the second time I asked, are you done? You said yes, and then wouldn't even wait 5 seconds. You are deliberately practicing white supremacy racism. I'm not going to let this nigger talk. And particularly because this black person is pointing out how I'm lying and practicing racism. Now, first you lied again. You said, I don't even understand what this angry nigger is saying. And then you came back and perfectly articulated my viewpoint. Perfectly. So either you don't understand or you do. The other thing I want to point out for listeners, I don't know about you all. I am a black male. I've been confused about lots of things, primarily because of individuals like Mr. Lichtblau, white people. But I've been confused about lots. If I'm confused, generally what I try to do, ask questions to get clarification. That's a lot of what I've been doing this evening, not interrupt immediately and talk, especially if I don't really understand what you're saying. If that's true, why don't you hush and allow me to speak? None of it holds up to logic. Even the paragraph that I read, that doesn't even hold up to logic, what you're saying. At any rate, I did want to ask one, as a white man, have you been accused of practicing racism by a non-white person before? Is this the first time for you?
Are you done? No, I didn't know whether I'm being given permission to speak. I'm not familiar with the ground rules of your interview because I've never done anything like this.
Only one of us has a pattern of interrupting her. I'm not even going to do that game with you, sir.
No, I'm just not sure how this is working.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Have you been accused of practicing racism by a non-white person before this evening, June 8th?
Never.
Never. First time. That might be what. In fact, this is what I said before. This is white behavior all the time. You just don't see this because most of the time, non-white people, we spend our time bickering and squabbling with other black people, telling Gus T, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't do that. I'm going to talk to Mr. Lichtblau, suspected racist, although he has been willfully practicing racism throughout this here conversation. I'm going to talk to him and pick out where I think he is lying and or practicing racism. That's what, and apparently he just said he hasn't experienced this before, so this must be a shocking situation. Like, I'm not accustomed to black people speaking to me this way. Do you think, you agreed we do have a system of white supremacy, do you think it's logical for any non-white person to suspect that you could be a racist as long as this system exists?
Let me ask you a question.
You're doing it again. You do not answer a question with a question. That's how format works. You said you wanted to explain what a conversation is. Question, answer. I asked the question. Are you going to answer my question?
You're going to tell me how I can answer you now? Now you're dictating how I can answer you.
I just said, are you going to answer my question, yes or no?
I thought we were having okay, we've now been talking for over 2 hours, so are we done yet?
Are you going to answer my question?
I don't remember. I had a question for you. I thought we were having.
Are you going to answer my question? You don't answer the question with a question.
I can answer a question with a question. I don't understand how it is that.
So you're not going to answer my question?
I'm trying to understand how.
Are you going? If you're not going to answer my question, then we're done. If you're done answering questions, we're done. Are you going to answer my question?
Then let's say we're done.
Okay. Muted. I'm not doing. You're going to sit here and beat it. Suspected race soldier Eric Lichtblau. We got our time, and I saw folks that had hands up, but I mean, really, if you can be tacky and trifling, I cannot say enough. If I was the one that was angry and mad, why are you the one interrupting? I do the same thing I do every program. What I do? Use my mute button. And, I mean, really, if it gets to the point where you're so trifling and tacky where I got to say, are you done? And then it's not even like, well, nigga, you long-winded and got to talk for 5 hours. Can I get 5 seconds? I'm just going to say again, you know you got a trifling lie. You can't even let me speak. We've talked to like 17 years we've been here. You can't even let me speak. You can, and I guess this was shocking. He's not accustomed to black people talking tough to him. Using counter-racist logic, dare I say. Such people do exist. I don't spend my time looking for black people to argue with, name call, curse. The problem is white, Mr. Lichtblau, that's it, Lichtblau. That's the problem right there, Even, in fact, his point in the book is the neo-Nazis. No. It's white people, man. It's not just the neo-Nazis why it's only 2.3% black people in Orange County. Not at all. It's white people like you. Anywhoodles, I'll pick out some of my notes and such. I had one where I was going to ask him about his usage of the term dark. I do want to point out he left. I asked him, even if and I would think anybody with self-respect, especially if you're talking on your platform, should I be happy and giggly and chuckles about you interrupting me repeatedly where I can't even respond? Should I be pleased about that? Practicing racism. He said, I resent that. We even got the F word, fair. Did you hear that? He said, Anyway, I'll get a few of my thoughts, observations in, take a quick break so that I can get a tease of water in. Man, I will just say quick, I was saying at the beginning, because I thought was being long-winded and taking a long time to answer questions and such at the beginning. It's like, yeah, hope get some constructive information. I felt better once we got to the military portion, and then he had been doing that the whole time. Minorities. This book is about a white person who killed another white person. White people do that all the time. That's not the system of white supremacy. In fact, the system of white supremacy, that's what allowed this to happen. If Sam Woodard, the killer that this book is about, if that had been Leroy, that Negro would have been locked up. He would have been kicked out of school. They would have had him in the system, facial recognition and all that. Blaze Bernstein, suspected racist Blaze Bernstein, would probably still be with us. That's another one. When you use that term minority and apply it to so-called white people, I don't care nothing about no legal. They will tell you that white men right now, that's what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are saying, that white men are minorities, can't get a job. When you use that term minority on people classified as white, if they're so-called Hispanic, Jew, gay, trans, I guess they're not racist now. We don't have no racist lesbians. We don't have no racist queers. We don't have no racist LGBTQ. We didn't interview Scott Lively, pink swastika. Beat it, Eric, racist suspect. Beat it, you're trifling. And then you're going to do all that to explain how a conversation works, and then you still can't stop yourself from interrupting. And answering a question with a question. That's a bit, I can't say that enough. I didn't grasp that one until I started getting serious about the science of counter-racism and particularly compensatory conversation control. You ask a question, it is not, I'm going to respond with a question. Oh, no. Before I would, oh, you got a question for me? Let's go. Nope. I don't care what your question is, even if that means we're done. Well, if I'm talking to a white person, I'm supposed to be asking questions. If you're not answering my questions, we are done. I'm not answering questions for a white. You're not answering my question. I invited you here to ask you questions. That's what an interview is. I did not invite you here to ask me questions. And for listeners, I've said, man, if you need a metric, am I being effective talking to this white person? One, there should be more questions asked of that white person than the other way around. It should be I asked more questions than making statements. It should not just be a pile of statements, but that now we done switched it and I'm not even answering questions. I say that all the time. That should be another metric. Did he answer my question? That's one of the master deceiver. I'm not going to answer a question. And I said that was a critical question. Is it logical to suspect a white person like you of being a racist? We're done. No problem. Racist suspect. You can take your resentment and I will retain my suspicion. Make sure we put in the title, suspected race soldier for telling heavyweight professional lies. Now we'll take our break and get back. I'll get a moment to share some of my thoughts, what I think was important beyond that. Man, being suspicious of all white people, importance of words, and man, make sure they answer your question, man. Even they get back, even if it's a question that you want to answer. No, man. I ask the questions around here. It's the context of white supremacy. We were on your platform. I answer your questions. You got the nightstick, the nigger knocker. I answer. Well, even then, fifth. What Mark Furman say? Fifth. May I speak to a lawyer? I have nothing to say. No comment. Even then, I don't answer your questions. Even with the nigger knocker, I don't answer your questions. You better have the electric testicle prod. I don't answer your questions. Lawyer. I don't answer your questions. Lawyer. Got a question for you, nigger. Yeah. We will be right back. Context of white supremacy. Gus T. Is that crackhead performance from Gus T? That's what that is? That's crackhead performance? Angry crackhead, Gus T. Renegade, a.k.a. the Black O.J. Simpson. He did mention George Lincoln Rockwell.
You know, I just can't afford to have 5 white people walking around here, even though they're white now. And I'm trying to help them and all like that, but they're not doing nothing but getting in the way. But they want a top salary for doing nothing. See, it ain't like they will take a salary cut. Because you've got 2 generations of white people now who are used to doing nothing. And some of their children are coming up behind them expecting to do nothing. And that's where a problem is. See, they want to go to work and sit with their feet on the desk all day. Put their hands behind their head and lean back in the swivel chair, look out the window, and draw top salary. It used to be a whole ocean of white people, really a whole world of white people who could do that. That was coming along. That was standard. But see, it's getting harder and harder to do that now. So white people are not hiring white people for a very logical reason. White people are too expensive. Guy who's trying to start out some little manufacturing company and whatnot. All of his white friends come in there looking for a job, but all of them want to be executives right from day one. The mathematics, the logistics of that, it doesn't work. Say, well, look, somebody's got to be down there doing some work, Oh, no, you know, we're all friends and whatnot, you know. Say, well, you know, hey, even on the plantation, you had to have a white man out there, to supervise the black people. Otherwise, the black people don't know what to do. They stand right there waiting on the boss. You don't even want to go out in the sun, you know. And they tell them that. But even back in the plantation days, you know, we didn't have, everybody didn't sit up on the porch sipping mint julep. We had to have some white guys that went down there to check on the niggas. And you don't even want to go check on the niggas. No, send Will, you know. Say, well, how you going to get any work out of them? You're not going to even go down there and tell them what to do. Well, that's too much work. See? And you have a number of white people who are just like that. Yeah. In other words, you're telling me to go down there and work with niggas. It's almost the same, you know. Come down there, I got to stand over them all day. It's hot out there. See, they used to have a whole cadre of white people who were willing to do that. Oh, yeah, give me a whip. I'd go down there and put them boys in line. But see, while he's whipping and whatnot, he's also out there in the sun himself. All right? He's out there sweating and getting all dusty and whatnot. But you have about 3 generations of white people now who don't want to get their hands dirty at all. They don't want to go to the field and be no field supervisor. They say, well, how are you going to tell all them Latinos, you know, how much lettuce to put on the wagons and all like that? Well, you know, hey, give them computers. No, that's exactly what we don't want to do. You can be educating them, you know. Yeah. See, that's what started happening in the late 1960s in South Africa. See, that's why you start having disturbances in South Africa. Because white guys got to the place, see, that they had a law in South Africa, never let a Kafir, a black person, handle any kind of machinery. Don't let them do nothing. Don't let them push a button. Don't let them know nothing about machinery. But see, some white supervisors start getting lazy, you know. They'll say, well, you know, send Waku out of there, you know. You get on the phone and call Waku and say, Waku, I'm going to sleep another 3 hours. I'll be in at 10 o'clock. I'm supposed to be there at 7. I haven't had enough sleep. So you go and open the gate. And that's how it started. So Waku out there, and, you know, in the shanty, he would get on his bicycle and go in and open up the gate. That's how it got started. And then by this time next year, he's not only opening the gate, but he's going in there and starting the machinery up, which was a no-no. That was against the law. But a lot of white guys was breaking the law. Of course, they got lazy. Okay? Next thing you know, the guy's coming in at noon, or sometimes in the afternoon. Because now he got 5 black guys in there who are really running the place. See, they've been there since 6:30 in the morning because they're used to hardship. And these are actual stories. These things start happening all over South Africa. Okay? And that's when they start having real problems. Because, see, you know, once the black guys start learning how to do things and whatnot, then they started talking about unions and all this and going on strike. Then the white guys was becoming dependent. And some of the old heads told them. Some of the old Dutchmen that have been around like forever said, I told you that, yeah, you can do that for a short while, but you get in the habit of doing that. Next thing you know, you won't even know how to run the stuff. They will know everything about running your business. And you'll be in there asking them, where is this and where is that? And I have seen enough of that to know how that works, too. It's very simple, you know. You just turn something over to somebody else, and next thing you know, they'll know more than you do. That's in anything. You know, you run a car repair shop, and you get to the place where the guy who came in don't know nothing about your cars. But you start showing him, well, this is a carburetor, and this is this, and this is that, and the oil changes, this is how you do it back here, and all like that. Then you get to the place where you don't do none of it, whereas you were doing most of it, okay? Or you were supervising, having parts of it done by different people, so that none of them learn very much. But you turn that over to someone, the whole shop, the next thing you know, and if they're used to a lot of hard work and you are not, because you get lazy, next thing you know, they know more about the place than you do. That's why George Lincoln Rockwell of the so-called American Nazi Party back in the 1970s, he used to make speeches right down here in Washington in front of the White House all the time, wearing swastikas and everything. And he used to say in his speeches, say, see these black guys out here with these jackhammers and whatnot? He said, if the white man keeps doing this, having these black guys out here doing all this work, running the jackhammers and running the forklifts and all like that, while he sits there, the white man sits up here, right in these office buildings right here in Washington, looking down on them from an air-conditioned building. He said, history has shown that when they keep doing that, they will become weak, and that black guy that they're laughing at out there in the hot sun will become strong. He said, and Adolf Hitler has warned us of this. The Germans are supposed to do their own work. So you get out there and do some sweating yourself. Otherwise, you will become too soft in body, and little by little, you become soft in mind. If you cannot let black people do all the work, and then little by little, they start doing some of the intelligent work, and so the next thing you know, you look up and they're doing all the work, both the paperwork and the heavy lifting, and they become a strong people. And you will become just some flabby guy who don't know nothing about how to do nothing, but sit up and have coffee all day. Now, George Lincoln Rockwell used to say that. Now, I had never even thought of it like that until he said it. But that does make sense. And that's something that's been happening all over the world, slowly but surely. And to that extent, the white supremacist system has been weakened. One thing I noticed when I was in the Army, and that is, I'm complaining about, it's 5:30 in the morning. Man, this is rough, okay? Until the wee hour, until almost, 10 o'clock at night, it's when they tell us we finally release. I'm up at 5:30, out here doing calisthenics and all like that. But then I guess I must have been in the Army about a month. And it hit me all of a sudden. I said, yeah, I do get up at 5:30 because that white sergeant comes in there banging on stuff and say, okay, everybody up, everybody out in formation in 15 minutes. Or it's going to be hell to pay for whoever's the last one out, okay? So we're scrambling, okay? But then it hit me one day. I said, yeah, he's getting us up at 5:30, which means he's got to get up at 3. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I began to appreciate the way that, that was going. Because I said, yeah, he's out here dogging us around every morning and all like that. 5:30 in the morning, waking us up and whatnot. But then it struck me, man, he's all spanned and polished and whatnot when he comes in there waking us up. I say, that means he had to get up at least an hour and a half before we got up. See, and that's what Hitler was talking about, and that's what George Lincoln Rockwell was talking about. Hey, you can't get weaker than your subjects. You fool around and get weaker than your subjects ain't going to be weak. They're going to be stronger than you.
You think that's the way this system can eventually be defeated? Just white people...
If they keep going in that direction, but history has shown that they stop. Because, see, right behind George Lincoln Rockwell making those kind of speeches everywhere he went, that's when the jogging craze started. Almost right on that time.
The jogging craze?
That's when it started. Wasn't no white body out here jogging up and down the street like you see. They've been doing that for 2-3 generations now. You see people jogging all the time in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see none of that before George Lincoln Rockwell was storming all over the place, warning, white people about that. Say, you better get off your behinds and stop being so soft.
Wow.
You can sit there with them behind those screens all day long, and do nothing but drink coffee and get big stomachs and all that. Say, you better break out of that. You got to be strong in mind and body. That's the German way. Said Hitler criticized the English, and he said indefinitely criticized the French. He said the French ain't nothing. I don't pay no attention to Frenchmen at all. Said they're just disgrace to the white race.
Wow.
Patting and feeling all day and sipping wine. Yeah, that's why we beat them in no time. They didn't know what hit them when we went to France. Up here reciting poetry and all that. Hell with that. Better get out there and do some work.
Wow. I have never heard anyone comment on jogging and when that trend started. And...
Yes. The jogging trend started in the 1970s. And people like George, he wasn't the only one. People like George Lincoln Rockwell was going around saying, we're getting too soft. We're getting too flabby. Look at us. Waddling up and down the street and thinking that we're all that, we're powerful and all like that. You said you're getting silly. So your body is getting weak, and your mind is going to follow. So if you keep a strong mind and a strong body, then that's a real Nazi. Your body got to be able to stand up to a whole lot of punishment. You got to be able to march across the Alps and think nothing of it.
Wow. We were just talking about the Rocky films with Sylvester Stallone, and that's like a huge theme in that movie. Like, you can't get out of shape, you can't get lazy and just sitting around.
And that's when they made the movie Rocky.
Wow. Oh, that's right. That's right. Wow.
Yeah, get out there. And they built a song around it. They had Rocky running all over Philadelphia.
That's right. Wow. Clubber Lang does exist. Gus T. Renegade, a.k.a. the Black OJ. That was a long clip, too, so I got lots of time, shoot a few lines, do a few shots of heroin, take time to find that vein sometime, say Gus T is a crackhead on some drugs and such. Middle finger, I've been saying that. I just do same thing now, just do it frequently. Middle finger up to everybody. Replace white supremacy with justice, especially if you think Gus T been doing all this. If you think Gus T been doing all this as some sort of drug fiend, or if you think Gus T rolled out of bed to do this conversation with Mr. Lichtblau. I guess it's not the same middle finger because I'm using both of them, but it has the same result. Replace white supremacy with justice. Let's see. We'll be here at minimum on Thursday, neutralizing workplace racism. Same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And Catherine Massey Book Club on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Michelle Alexander, New Jim Crow. One thing that I do want to get at, man, I don't know what other programs y'all listen to, and I don't care. Gus T and the Cows, one of one. I should not sound like many of the other people who do programs where they talk about racism. Maybe they say the term racism, maybe even say the term white supremacy or phrase. We speak to white people almost exclusively. I read our guests' material. That is irregular even amongst white hosts. Not saying everyone fails to do this, but woo, it is widespread. If our guest had just stayed, it's either one. I did want him to answer that question about, is it logical to suspect? Like, give me that one. And then all I needed was one page turn because I had my notes prepared. Like, oh man, the reason that I get to be aggressive when I talk to white guests, I have done my homework. Act up. Really, it doesn't matter how you respond to the question. I'm going to be able to work with any of it because I've read your material. If you're truthful to the material, great. If you're not, I got my highlights ready to roll. Now, I just read that passage, him comparing the treatment of black people to gays, Hispanics, Jews, all this nonsense. All I needed was to flip over. Let me give you one more. This is the exact same chapter. Now, you tell me, now, is this logical, accurate? The murder of 14-year-old Emmett Till. 9 years later, his bludgeoned black face visible through a glass-topped casket wouldn't be enough to prompt Congress to act either, nor would the 1963 killings of 4 black schoolgirls in the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham in a bombing by the Klan, or the murder that same year of Medgar Evers, the NAACP leader in Mississippi, shot in the back at his home by a sniper, or the hundreds of other high-profile attacks on black people and other minorities, most never prosecuted at the hands of Klansmen and extremists. I will say quickly, the end of that last sentence, I felt it should have just been white people, because some of these individuals who committed these crimes, including murders, they would say I was not in the Klan, and they'd be truthful, I was racist. I killed that Negro, I wasn't in the Klan. That would be some of these crimes. And I think racist, white supremacist is more accurate and specific than extremist, and certainly Klansmen. But to the greater point, when he says high-profile attacks on black people and other minorities, do you mean high-profile attacks on white gay people? Who are you talking about during this time period? And particularly, that would be comparable to what happened to Emmett Till? Medgar Evers? Who are you talking about? Come on, man. Stop lying. Stop. That's what I mean. Like, all of that is, these are professional strength lies. And it's designed to even, really, this time period, like, are you seeing violence of this nature? Like, he told us in Orange County, now you got a pretty sizable population of so-called Asian people, sizable population of so-called Hispanic people, ain't no sizable population of Negroes. Now, how would that be if you got same types of high-profile violence against black people and other minorities? All the other minority groups then came up and the Negroes are still there. How could that be? That's what I mean. Stop lying. And in fact, the lie is, why didn't you list them? Same thing I said when he lied previously, when I said, hey, name a sundown town where it was, hey, no fags. Because they got tons of them. We've seen the pictures. We read James Lowen. No niggers. Got tons of them. Give me one town. I didn't need name. Give me the exact number of the total number of these towns in existence. Just, do you know of any? And he had to do all that hemming and hawing and interrupting. And well, no, I guess I don't know of any. Hey, we can extend it out in perpetuity. Do any of you know of any town ever in this part of the world that has banned white gays, white queers, white trans. Do you all know of such a place? I don't. I've never heard that. I've learned something. Anyway, I cannot emphasize enough the compensatory conversation control aspect. One thing I think might be unique about this platform, white people interrupt. Now, Fire and all the rest of you all interrupt me all the time. White people on this here broadcast, that interrupting, I use my mute button. I don't interrupt listeners, even those who interrupt me. I don't interrupt you all. Sit quietly. We have white guests, even when I think they're practicing racism, even when they lie, even when they, say things that are not true. I give them their moment, and then I'm ready to roll with my response. To lecture? As though you don't know how to have a civilized conversation. You're the one doing all the interrupting. Particularly, are you done? It's so trifling. You have to ask someone, are you done? And then they still interrupt. And then claim, well, I didn't really understand what you said. Well, why don't you shut up and let me finish? No logic at it. Ain't no logic to what he wrote. We all just minorities here. And ain't no logic to the conduct when a black person points this out. And then particularly points out, I think you're practicing racism. Oh my Lord, I'm resentful and offended. And then can I speak now? Did you see how Trump, Mr. Fuller said, doesn't get any better than tacky. You see now, I would ask my question, have you been suspected of being racist before? Am I allowed to speak now? You're going to tell me how to answer the question? Hey man, I just wanted you to stop interrupting me. That's the only problem. If you would allow me to speak, if you would show the same courtesy that I've extended to you throughout, we could have moved on through. I could have read that other passage about Emmett Till and said, now you got it in 2 times in short succession. You think that's accurate? Now, in fact, name some of the other people. Who are the white gay people who were subject to this sort of Emmett Till type violence during this time period? Who are you talking about? Come on, man. Anyway, I hope that is appreciated in terms of having a platform calling that out when white people, that's common too. I will say, man, people just talk over you. You are a black person. You are the dumbest person in the world. Nothing that you say has any value, or you're lying, or you're a crackhead, or all of the above. They just will interrupt and talk all over top of you. Stop that. Like, hey man, particularly if you are, even attempting to be courteous. I attempt to be courteous on this platform. I don't care what you all think. Totally irrelevant. Totally more irrelevant. Your opinion about my conduct is out of this world insignificant to me. It would have to be right, because I just said I had my middle fingers up to all of you. So it would have to be. Gus does not care at all what you think about my conduct. Anyway, if you're at least working to be somewhat courteous in the dialogue, well then dang, it should not be I got to talk all over top of you and you can't talk, and I got to be hostile about, come on. And then once you point out, hey man, you're interrupting me consistently, you're interrupting me. Fine, I'll let you get your stupid point. Really? Dang. But that is very common in the system of white supremacy. Fine, finish your stupid point. Got it. But I'm the one that needs a lecture on how to participate in a civilized manner in the conversation. Anyway, anything else I want to make sure that I get? I will have to, at the beginning, about the first 20 minutes, because I thought he was long-winded and man, you're taking so long to get to these answers and blah, blah, blah. Hitting the section, Wade Page and the military, I thought that was important. White people are very informed. These white, just like Columbine, the problem is not white people are ignorant about racism. White people are dedicated to practicing racism. That's why they don't punish white people for practicing racism. That's what they are supposed to do. Mistreat non-white people, especially black people. That's why that thing, if you stay long, I had even more of those. It just pops up over and over. White people not being punished for practicing racism. He even mentioned that, the story. I had the names and everything. Tyson Mayfield, that was the white man he talked about, who the three strikes law in California was supposed to apply to him. He had terrorized all these black people, non-white people. He went to violently assault a pregnant black female, and he kept telling her, "I'm going to make you drop your baby," as he ran to go pummel her. She had to run for she and her baby's life. This white dude, he goes to court, and they're like, nah, we're not going to give him something lenient sentence. And they had to go like, wait a minute, this dude was going to assault a pregnant female, and he had a long history of violence and serial racist, serial violent racist felons. What you talk about, Michelle Alexander's. Hey, if we supposed to, and it's in California, 3 strikes, he's supposed to be out. And I said, they kept they had to keep going back to court and keep going back to court. Now he finally did get like close to a 30-year sentence, but they had to keep it. If this had been Leroy, Tukey Williams, it probably would have been locked up before he got an opportunity to terrorize a black female. But that it is not white ignorance. White people and the people who were white people doing the sentencing, the problem wasn't that they didn't know Mr. Mayfield's history. They had all the gory details. It's not ignorance. It's our guest. He's not ignorant about I keep interrupting that nigger. Yes, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm defending my racist lies. Use that word fair. You say that part of it, fair. You're not even treating me fair. I resent it. Anyway, anything else? The role of white women, that was one I was going to get in. His book focuses a lot on white men. You do not have Orange County, California, or a global system of white supremacy without white women. That's it. Anything else? White genetic annihilation, Dr. Welsing being accurate. If anything, if white people can snoop, if the FBI and white authorities can snoop on Dr. Welsing when she's Frances Welsing at 19, 21-year-old college student, they certainly could have nipped a lot of this white violence in the bud way early. The military components, they could have addressed all of that. We got a serious problem here. We can't be having these Wade Pages, Timothy McVeigh, us really subsidizing white paramilitary operations. We can't be doing. We snooping on Dr. Welsing. Medical Dr. Welsing. Anyway, let's see. Folks have thought to share on lame or suspected race soldier Eric Lichtblau, who I thought he might have, tried to say I'm so-called Jewish or something, where he might try to say, hey, I'm minority too, I know what it's like. I thought, but I asked him, he said, no, I've never had my acceptance as a white man challenged. That's what he said. Suspected race soldier Eric Lichtblau will be very brief. Let's see. Octavius in New York, did you have a quick thought what you heard from Mr. Lichtblau, other than his audio being a little bizarre? I don't know. I was able to hear the tackiness. I know I got that. I wish his audio had been a little bit higher, but beyond that, did you have a quick comment, Octavius in New York? Oops.
Yeah, greetings, Gus, greetings, callers and listeners. It was a little frustrating because to me, it's just a basic level of respect from the jump, and that was hard to get past in the listening because it just seemed like he didn't even respect your opinion or any other opinion that wasn't quote unquote along his line of thought, because he couldn't fathom that a non-white male or a non-white person in general would actually have information or think something beyond what he would think and disagree with him, because of course he's white and he knows everything. So a little frustrating to listen to when he just kept on interrupting. And I think everybody that is non-white, specifically black, has dealt with that from various other so-called ethnicities. So frustrating, but I'm glad you kind of nipped it in bud and shut it down, so to speak. It's sometimes necessary, because he definitely hasn't had that happen to him before. You could tell. Very noticeable, I'll tell you that, man. Side note, just a mess over here in New York due to the Trump and FIFA and finals and all that other junk, but still pushing forward and trying to stay focused in the midst of a lot of the mayhem. I'll mute my line.
He said, other ethnicities. Black brother, I have people classified as black with 8 black grandparents who gleefully interrupt me all the time. So it for sure is not nothing where it is just people classified as white who interrupt me, or non-white, non-black people. Cows, investors interrupt me. Nigger, you don't know. Widespread. He did say the finals in New York, Mr. Lichtblau mentioned that as a white ball game, much less to have the NBA finals in flipping New York City, capital of the world. Oh my good. And President Trump gotta go to NYC and cheer on the Knicks. And come on. Mayhem. I would not want to be anywhere around Madison Square Garden. I cannot even imagine, even if President Trump was not there. The surveillance, I suspect they might even have facial recognition technology operating in the garden and all the, like, I'm good on all of that. Man, they've been messed around and think, you related to Charles Oakley? Let's see. Our victim in New Jersey, who I don't know, he might also be dealing with the chaos from the white ball game in the Big Apple. Victim in New Jersey.
I second what the caller just said. I work on Route 3, so I'm dealing with the FIFA shenanigans, and the traffic is about to be very horrible. But I wanted to ask the guests some questions. I too thought he was lying when he was talking about the accelerist theory. I'm glad that he brought up Charles Manson. Like, he was speaking about all this as this is new. This is why I really can't wait for Trump to get out of office. Hopefully he isn't the dictator that they say he is, and he goes for 3. But if he do, it's out of my power. He made it seem like the internet has increased the racism when we had 36 years of Rush Limbaugh that was syndicated on 600 channels. So I wanted to ask him, does he think that Rush Limbaugh contribute to the rise of the racism and white extremists that we see? The white martyr, Charlie Kirk, before he was shot by a white shooter, he was about to go on a racist tirade about black crime, and the irony that he was shot by a white male while he was about to denigrate black people and lie about crime stats and say that all crime starts with black people. People when he also made it seem like Donald Trump was the worst president as it relates to racism. Donald Trump is basically singled out for his rhetoric. So I wanted to ask him, what was worse, Donald Trump's rhetoric or Franklin Roosevelt's exclusion of black people from the New Deal? And I was also going to ask him, was he aware of the record of Andrew Jackson? So yeah, Gus, you was correct for just cutting the conversation short, because he just wanted to interrupt and just defend his book of lies and put everything on conservatives and white extremists. And that's the problem. Once we get rid of Donald Trump and white extremists that run rampant on the internet, problem solved. Like we didn't have 30 to 40 to 50 years of white ring radio just denigrating black people over the airwaves all across this country. I close.
Much obliged. FIFA. We have that here in Seattle. Us too, black brother. I don't keep up with all of the white ball games, but they have been talking about that, and traffic is going to be really bad, and prepare for it, and blah, blah, blah. And I try to stay away from the stadium, which is downtown Seattle anyway. I think it's going to be the soccer FIFA tournament where the Seahawks play football. So I try to stay away from that end of town anyway. Man, like the next month, really stay away from that part of Seattle. Like, oh man, probably all the crime in it, man. Anyway, pray for everybody, for the people who are in areas where they have the FIFA tournament, and maybe for the finals as well. With all of the white ball games that are happening, I guess Wimbledon is about to be taking place, and all the rest of the hockey, all the people that are having sporting activities, and all the mayhem and unsafety that goes with that for those locations, traffic included. Hopefully we can get through it safe, and we can talk about that later. A great point about Rush Limbaugh. All those decades where I guess he did get a teaspoon of his time where they had Wi-Fi, but he had a long and impactful history years before they had any sort of Wi-Fi of note. And he was reaching lots of race soldiers across the land. Even I was thinking of the lynching postcards. I mean, if you want to go way, way back, no Wi-Fi then, we can reach and show what a good time we had. So new medium, yes, allows greater reach and all of that. But I mean, white people, they showed that's what I was saying too about the threat to white existence. That's Dr. Welsing's, the core of her theory of white genetic annihilation. Sometimes it's more palatable, or it is expressed more vehemently, but that is the core of white culture. That's their games, billiards and such. Dr. Welsing broke that down symbolically and all of that. That's chess. That is the core of white existence, the fear of white genetic annihilation. That's what motivates that. That's why ain't no niggers in Orange County. And it's been that, as he said, ain't made no progress, been that way for a long time. That ain't extremist. That's just white behavior, white culture. Great point as well. The rhetoric or the policy. That's what even Woodrow Wilson, you could take the rhetoric of Birth of a Nation, or the impact that he had on employment of black people, federal employment for black people. Maybe Mr. Fuller couldn't have been at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing if Woodrow Wilson had his way. Same thing, he said FDR with excluding black people from the New Deal and all the ramifications of that. We talked about some of that with Michelle Alexander as well. Excellent point. Let's see. The victim. Did you have commentary on Mr. Lichtblau? Should be with us as well. Victim.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. Greetings to the cows, listeners, and callers. Yeah, Mr. Lichtblau was very passive aggressive when you were speaking to him and you were trying to make your point, and that the antagonist is saying, trying to repeat your statement to you, or can I finish, or to that effect. I thought that was just very tacky and unprofessional for someone who wants to portray themselves as being an authority on this topic. But I guess when it comes to talking to, like you guys pointed out, when it comes to talking to non-white people, it doesn't matter how they portray themselves. They're white, and whatever they say will be considered authority and right. I do have a little story about Orange County myself, and that area is very hostile. The area has a quote-unquote Disneyland in that area. We all know the history of Walt Disney in that area as well. My brother went to one of these tournaments out in the convention center, and he was disqualified by a white woman official just because he had spoke out of bounds during one of the matches there. And not only did this white woman disqualify him, this person also got him kicked out of the whole tournament moving forward, and called the security and police to escort him out of the building for just talking out of turn. So the hostility in the Orange County area is, as you know, very, very, very rich and strong there. But yeah, Lichtblau, not disappointed, not surprised. Just I expect white people to be attacking us. But I think you handled it pretty well, Gus. And kudos for setting ground. But that'll be it for me. Thank you again for taking my call.
What an anecdote given the context. Like, wow. He said his brother got secured, like they done dragged him. Well, he didn't say dragged him out, but maybe they did. Dragged him out of the convention facility. We don't know mouthy niggers here. And he said, white woman. That's exactly what I said. That was one critique I had of his Lichtblau's work. Is very white men, that white patriarchy thing. Like, you can't have the system without white women. Where are they? Oh, there's one. Said, we're not just going to get you disqualified. You getting told you we got 2.3% Negroes, and we trying to get rid of the ones that we got here. Like, man, what can we do? Get them. And for I said the context of this conversation. I ain't gonna take no lip from no Negro. That's what Mr. Lichtblau said. I don't take lip from no Negro. I don't take lip from no Negro. You don't tell me I'm wrong. You don't tell me I'm racist. You don't tell me I'm lying. I don't take lip from no Negro. That's what he talk all over you. Man, wow. And I'm not surprised at all with that. Just he spoke out of that. I don't know. Did he curse somebody? Did he threaten a white woman? Did he quote Louis Farrakhan? I don't know. I can't even imagine. What does one say? You get disqualified and you have now been banned from the premises. Like, good God. What? And I say that all the time. The humiliation factor in front of, and it ain't even no black people here. I guess it's 2.3% black people. So it's like me, my mom, cousin. That's it, basically. You have me dragged out by security in front of everybody, all my classmates and friends and neighbors, and oh, look, I bet, what was he talking about, raping a white woman? That's what I said. You know, them niggers, they always into something. Come on. Like, Jesus. much obliged for sharing. Like, I know I've said for years, sometimes it's not nothing to be proud of. Nobody wants to talk about how their brother had that sort of terroristic experience as a young person. But I mean, that is Orange County white supremacy. That's the exact Khalid Flimban. Oh man, does that name mean anything to you, Khalid Flimban?
No, sir. Sorry about earlier. My call's off, but I'm not too familiar with that name. So.
Oh, okay. He's privileged black male who was suspiciously found hanging to death from a Orange County playground approximately 13 years ago. They just ruled it a suicide, and ho-hum, and the small number of black people in the region have been talking about this case. We talked about that case when we had Rusty Kennedy on. He's the white executive director of the Orange County Committee of Race Relations, I think is what it's called. But we talked about that case, Khalid Flimban, and there isn't even a whole lot of material on it in terms of news reports and all of that. But they've had protests and everything else. Even you can think about that now. Who goes to commit suicide at a playground? Even though they did say that was Lennon Lacey too. Cowbell. But yeah, that's Orange County. With your brother said, do you know what your brother allegedly said that resulted in him getting banned from the premises and disqualified?
Yes, sir. Is they're playing some kind of card game tournament, and the person he's playing against made a wrong move. He called it out, and he asked the person, well, you can just, agree to, quit this match because you made an error on one of these calls for these rules of these games or they're playing. Then the white woman official intervened and said, no, she's going to disqualify you because she just didn't like the way you had spoke to this. It was a quote-unquote Asian gentleman, I guess. He took him off to the side. First, what he tells me, he took him off to the side and talked to him for briefly. Then he came back, his story, he was crying and stuff like that. So it was just a big to-do in that situation. I'm not familiar with Khalid Flimban. I will definitely look that up, sir. But I do remember the case out there in Palmdale of Robert Fuller, who was also found hanging in a park close to a sheriff department out there. Yeah.
Wow. He said hanging there at the sheriff's department. Jesus. Like, that is... Wow, I had not heard of that case. I don't hang out in Orange County, and to make sure I do not, but I have to investigate that one as well. They have all of those suspicious deaths of black people hanging.
This was in Palmdale. It's more north, not really. That's more LA County, not Orange County.
Oh, okay. That's still, that's kind of the same thing, basically. But I strive for accuracy, for sure. Appreciate that. The NPR, they have, this is from July 9, 2020. Death of Robert Fuller, who was found hanging from a tree, ruled suicide. A 24-year-old black man was found, black male, I didn't write it, but 24-year-old black male who was found hanging from a tree in a park in Southern California last month died by suicide, the LA County Sheriff's Office said Thursday. Just for context, the LA County Sheriff's Office, we just talked about them with Terrence King. These would be the same folks who were sued about mocking the death of Kobe Bryant. They had the pictures and were taking them to the bar, unless my memory is bad, if that means anything in terms of context. Fuller's death was initially ruled a suicide, but that conclusion outraged his family, who insisted that he would not take his own life. Locals, too, were skeptical, citing the area's troubled racial history. That's why I said that sounds just like Orange County. It's basically the same thing. Thousands of people turned out in Palmdale in the days after Fuller's death to demand an independent investigation by California's Attorney General into what many believed was a lynching. An attorney for the family said he would make a statement or hold a news conference later, according to the AP. Fuller's death occurred against the backdrop of the police killing of George Floyd and as Black Lives Matter protests ramped up. The situation was further inflamed days after Fuller's death when his half-brother, Teron Jamal Boone, was killed during an interaction with L.A. County Sheriff's deputies. Wow. Again, we just talked about L.A. County Sheriff's deputies with Tarrant racism, and in fact, he was talking about how the coroners and how they can work together. But we just talked about all this and racism with the LA County Sheriff's Department. We just talked about all of them in great detail. System of White. I said we've done a lot of work on California system of white supremacy racism. They're important for so many reasons. Rodney King, O.J. Simpson, Mark Furman, Eazy-E, Kendrick Lamar. You can go all day long. But California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tukey Williams, system of white supremacy, Johnny Cochran, system of white supremacy, Black Panther Party. So, California is very important in the system of Charlie Manson. He got mentioned today too, right? Very important in the system of white supremacy racism. But I did not know about the case of Robert Fuller. I have to investigate this one a little bit more after we get off the program and such. But wow, that is black male privilege. We've had a few, I'll say quickly before we wrap, we've had a few of these where we've had a white person where I think many times we have white people on the program, it might be the first time that they've had a black person question them and or say, I suspect you're practicing racism. That might be, we don't say that sort of thing. This one, for sure, all of that, and I don't interrupt. I wanted all that seamless to just listen. Everything who do you, and you can just hear how tacky it got from that moment forward. Like, not me, I didn't call him any names, anything like that. Just, what is all this interrupting? And are you done? Yes. Okay, and you're not even going to give me 5 seconds to defend your lie? It does not get any better than tacky triple T through and through. Any hoodles, much obliged for the folks who chimed in. Hopefully, if he hadn't been tacky, maybe we could have got a question or two, but yeah. We'll be here on Thursday. I'll update online if we switch it up and have a guest with us prior to Thursday, but at minimum 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, provided we don't float away or die in the FIFA maelstrom in particular. I'm so glad other folks brought that up because that is happening in lots of cities. So yeah, that'll be, man, I'm not pleased about that. I don't pay attention to even if the NBA finals has been in Seattle repeatedly, even if that were here, I would not be, I would be whining and crying about that as well. Like, oh my God, like traffic, human trafficking. They've said that tends to accompany these sort of big sporting events. I guess you need non-white people to pleasure the white spectators when they're not at the ball games. But maybe we'll have a chance to talk about all that as we proceed into summer of 2026 FIFA indeed. Anyway, we'll talk about all that later. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. We are in a very dangerous environment, Orange County, and you could be found hanging from a playground, park. Dangerous environment. We need our brain computers working at high capacity so that we can keep ourselves safe and make great decisions, hopefully preempt violent situations. Kind of already sense, wait a minute, this is not, I need to get out of here immediately. Creator, we ask that you remind us, because we can see a white dude like Eric Lichtblau and think, hey, this white dude is writing about racism. He is not racist. Stop saying not all white people are racist. Stop name calling and cursing people classified as black. If Gus T, anyone classified as black, is that lame, you already know it's supposed to be minimized,
contact. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cows signing out. Thanks all for tuning in. Robert Fuller, Khalid Blemban.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.